What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Leading Edge Kitesurfing Podcast. I'm joined today by Herbert Vuijk, the founder of the Surfr App, and the topic for today is the truth about jump height measurement. So, guys, we're chilling here in Guryu, Brazil, in Herbert's new posada called Quatro Coqueiros. Herbert, you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, sure. First of all, congrats on pronouncing Quatro Coqueiros, because not everybody knows how to do that. It stands for 4 palm trees. That's what we see from here. You guys unfortunately don't see it from this angle. But it's our luxury posada here in Guryu that I did together with my girlfriend, Leticia. And we tried to create something really special, you know, like high standards, in really nice in the details, good showers, good food, and obviously this area, which is like the social heart of the place. In Guryu, one of the windiest places in the world, for 6 months in a row. So yeah, definitely come check it out if you're around. That's one thing for sure.
Cool. So, guys, yeah, this place is absolutely amazing, and Herbert is an entrepreneur and a very excitable guy. He's very passionate and works on so many projects. I look forward to talking a little bit about his past projects, but keeping the focus on jump height measurement and session tracking today. Here's the game plan. We've got a bit of a roadmap of these topics that we're going to go through today. We're going to talk about accuracy of jump height measurement, how it works, getting into the technical details. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence and its role in jump height measurement. We're going to talk about the different types of sensors and their effects on accuracy, reliability, etc. Talk about fairness in jump height measurement, a roadmap for the future and Herbert's vision for the future. I'm quite excited to talk also a little bit about the psychological aspects and the social aspect of these games that we play. And lastly, we will talk a little bit about Surfer versus Woo. But I do want to be clear that the goal of this podcast is not to recruit Woo users to Surfer or to bash Woo at any point. In fact, Herbert and I think we've spoken about it. We don't want this to be anything we say to be a direct attack on Woo. That being said, I always want to speak honestly and openly with you guys. So if I do have something that I feel is truthful, I'm going to say it. But if that happens to be a little bit of a knock at Woo, that's just because that's my perception of the truth. So no disrespect there. Herbert, anything to add to that?
I mean, I guess yes. Like just from like an introductional point of view, I think many people know that I founded the Surfr App like quite a while ago, 4 years ago, which was a fun thing. Like, it was basically just an experiment, like not really too much commercial intentions, but just trying out, like, can you measure jump heights with a phone? That was the initial idea, with a phone on your board. That was really the very first idea. And it's just funny to see how far it has come in such a short time frame, like 4 or 5 years now. And now together with the team working on like such a nice app. And just one thing that I want to say as well, as part of the introduction, when we saw the questions coming in, we asked many questions. There were many questions about how does Surfr compare to this, how does Surfr compare to that, like, you know, to other solutions that are out there in the market. And I also want to add to that although it might look like it, because there's so many, you know, information going around, this podcast is not meant for going into some, you know, back and forth about what is better. It's more about, you know, what we do and why we do it and how we do it. And I think this is something that excites people, that interests people. And yeah, I mean, if I look at Surfr, 5 years ago, 0 users. Today, Surfr is the most used app. If you look at like the daily users on the app for tracking heights. Obviously, there's gonna come moments in time when other parties in the market are trying to say stuff about you, and I think we can only be proud of that, because apparently Surfr has become that relevant right now. But today is not the day that we're gonna address every single thing that is going around, every, you know, idea, conspiracy, assumption. I think it's much more about us, and I'm super excited to be on the podcast to discuss exciting stuff.
Awesome. So I think a lot of people think that when I say, hey, we're going to talk about the truth about jump height measurement, they assume that a competitor has to be part of the discussion. But let's assume there weren't any competitors and we were just to get into the nitty gritty details of jump height measurement, how do kickers affect your jump, how do board off sensor placement, how important is the software versus the hardware, all those nitty gritty details that actually don't need to be brought up in the context of another competitor. It's just inherently very interesting.
Sure. And beside that, obviously it's really easy to get lost in super technical details. For sure, there will be some people listening and watching that love that. But I think for us the challenge is also to keep it on a level that everybody's gonna enjoy something about it. We're not only gonna talk about technical details. But we're definitely going to touch on a bunch of nice topics that hopefully everybody finds something valuable in this podcast.
All right. So my role today is to ask the questions that get this genius Herbert to truly. I respect Herbert, and I would say he's a genius. One of a few friends who I'd be like, man, this guy's next level clever. If he isn't a genius, then I don't know who is, frankly. So my role is to ask him the right questions. Sometimes I'm going to ask a little bit of dumb questions. Sometimes I know the answer, but I feel that these questions must be asked so that everybody can be brought up to speed. So Herbert, tell me, first of all, you said that Surfr is the most used app and used solution on the market to date. How do you track that?
So I was just referring to like the daily people that are on the leaderboard, on the height leaderboard, jumping around with the app basically, and since like a couple of months or so, Surfr has been having the most users per day on the app, which is really amazing considering where we come from and how it started. So I'm super happy about that, and to see this adoption and that people like the app. Obviously, it comes with challenges at time. More. You need more to answer more questions. More things go wrong, like absolutely speaking. So it's challenging, but super rewarding as well at the same time.
So Herbert's been tracking the number of users and the number of sessions being posted to Surfr, and Woo being the next biggest competitor for a while. And it was when was it that you guys overtook Woo? It was
I think earlier this year. Yeah.
Earlier this year.
Yeah. I mean, Surfr is kind of without addressing necessarily what is happening for other companies. Surfr has been like growing almost parabolic, how do you say it? Like doubling exponential. Yeah, every year we have been doubling. That won't be the case forever, for sure not. I mean, doubling from 1 to 2 is really simple in terms of users. Doubling from 50,000 to 100,000 people is super difficult. But we are on track for cracking the 100,000 people on the app soon, probably within 6-7 months or so. So please, if you didn't download the app yet, this is the time, and help us crack the 10,000, the 100,000. So
I think that's quite interesting. I think for a while there was this. On the topic, while we're on the topic, I'm going to bring it up. I did say this wouldn't be a Woo versus Surfr podcast, but while we're on the topic, there were some people who were saying, I don't want to stop using Woo and start using Surfr because all my friends are on Woo. And I think it's been quite interesting. I was hearing that narrative for a while, and I'm seeing that change. But I think a lot of people aren't actually aware that Surfr has become so big that that's no longer the case. That actually is the most used solution out there. And you can see this yourselves, actually. If you just go check the number of daily sessions being submitted on the leaderboard, you can check it out. But anyway,
I think it's just insanely, for me, I noticed because there's more and more people that come here to Brazil. Like, let's say 2-3 years ago, somebody started talking about Surfr, or I started talking, and like very often they wouldn't know about it. And now, especially in this windy region, everybody knows. They're with the watch, and I mean, numbers are numbers after all. Like I think our focus is not so much on them; it's much more about the product. And I think that is also what causes us to grow so quickly, and to keep focusing on that, and also not to think like, if I think about Surfr, one thing that wouldn't be smart to do is like, okay, now we have the community, we don't, you forget to innovate. Like, we now have the community, we don't need to add any more features. I think it's super important to keep focusing on the product, because for sure if we don't deliver the best solution to the market, somebody else will at some point, right? and I mean, anybody could start something similar. Obviously, it's not easy, but yeah, we need to remain product focused for sure.
With you. So, why did you start the Surfr app?
Just for fun. I mean, I was kiting for a couple of years, and obviously, like everybody, you start jumping, you want to know how high you're jumping, and I was like, can I do that with a phone? Like, and I really had the idea the phone need to be on the board, something that we are going to talk about later for sure. It needs to be on the board. So I wasn't really thinking yet. I mean, I assumed it would be impossible to track the phone on your chest, which was the second idea, and eventually with the watch. But yeah, you always think initially it's impossible, and then you start and you get the first version and it works somewhat, and then it encouraged you to push further, you know. So, but it was really just for fun. I was in a time of my life I didn't have so much to do. That was a choice, but I thought, let's see what I can do for kiteboarding, and then my friends liked it. People start using it. Thought, let's push it to the App Store, to the Play Store actually initially, just Android initially, because I was an Android user at the time. And after that, I thought, okay, this might be a business, you know. So many people like the app, and if you can make a business out of your passion, I think that's the best thing that you can do, and you should know all about it.
Absolutely, and sometimes you can also just completely ruin your passion.
Yeah, true. I don't kite anymore.
That's the funny thing. Right now, the wind is pumping, and we're here recording a podcast. I'm just like,
but I did kite yesterday. I did even win a dinner for jumping, making the highest jump here on the water. So it was actually quite nice. So no, still.
But so I think that's really cool that you started it, and it wasn't for commercial reasons. And I think it's important for users of the app to realize that. This whole thing is built on passion. It's not it was never built to monetize, and it's not your get rich quick scheme.
Not yet. No, but of course, like there's people
you guys are doing well
depending
now
on it, right? Yeah, for sure. And there is a team of 6-7 people that are all working. Everybody needs to be able to to survive this life. So for sure, we're like thinking more commercially, but at the very heart of Surfr is still the passion, you know. And everybody that works here would say the same. And a very good example is Ali, who reached out like a couple of years to me, and he said like, man, I want to bring this app also to the Galaxy Watch. And I said, okay, but I cannot pay you anything. He said, no problem. I just like the project. I love the project. And till this very day, this guy has just been working for Surfr basically unpaid, you know. So I think there's a lot of passion, and of course we hope for some reward in the future, but we really like what we do.
I'm with you. So for those of you who don't know, Herbert was quite successful financially before the Surfr app, and maybe in a past life, a different life. I think he was he's still an extremely hardworking guy, but more corporate, I would say, right?
Yes, but right before Surfr, I had another company where we also made some software, and that definitely made it possible for me to start with Surfr, which required investments, especially in the beginning when we had the idea of making this board mount. Made the board mount in China, produced the board mount in the Netherlands. Now making a plastic product, especially when it exists out of, let's say, 12 different components, it's really intensive. It costs money, but I was able to do that luckily. But yeah, in the meanwhile, times have changed and focus have also changed.
Sure. Oh, guys, I got to let you know something. Full transparency, a couple of people have asked, like, what is my involvement in the Surfr app? Am I an investor or just a huge fan, or what is it? I am an ambassador for the Surfr app. I'm the first ambassador, I believe. I'm the first guy to be contracted to represent the app. And I want to tell you a little bit about how my journey to joining the team. So, obviously I was using Woo before. We were all using Woo. And Herbert had reached out to me, I think, before COVID, and he was quite keen for me to test out the Surfr app. And at the time, he had a board mount. I remember thinking like, oh man, I take my phone on the water, I risk damaging my phone. It's going to be a big clunky board mount. I don't want something on my board. So I wasn't that interested, but just being open to ideas, I was like, sure, send me a board mount. I'll test it out. So he sent me the board mount V1. I think you shipped it to me in Bali. I think you shipped it to me like during COVID.
Probably, yeah, because it was
No, it was before then.
before
You shipped
COVID
it to me in
even. It was
Bali.
like 4
though.
years ago now.
Can't believe it actually still arrived to me in
Yeah.
Bali. So that was cool. So I got the board mount. I remained open to using it. I was doing quite some stuff with Woo at that point in time. I was working on my How to Edge video years ago. It took me so many years to get the How to Edge video out. But I was working on that video, and one of the guys in the Woo team came down to Lyle in Washington to shoot with me, and we were just trying to find ways to use the technology that we had, Woo, to help people learn how to edge better and improve their takeoff. And after filming for the first day and then looking back at the data, I was looking at the data and I was like, man, this isn't what we need. We need to know edge angle, and not just at a specific moment in time. You need to know your edge angle throughout your takeoff and in your approach, because if someone's not holding their edge, especially during their approach, they're not going to have a good jump. So I spoke to Leo and I said, man, Leo, this is cool, but we're missing some important metrics. And like, can we get these added? He said, sure, send me an email with your requests, like what data you would like to see and why, motivate why. So I sent him an email. It was quite straightforward and plain. And I never got any response. And it was, it was just quite a shame, because, you have me, a guy who's like very passionate about educating people and helping them to jump better. And I briefed quite clearly as to like what data we needed and why. And it was just obvious that we needed to know that data. And nothing ever came of it. And I think it's because at that point in time, Woo had been going through some really tough times in the company. There weren't a lot of people working in the business anymore. And the passion for solving these problems, honestly, I don't think it was there anymore. They were just, they were complacent. They were the top dog already. There was nobody there to compete with them. And I just wasn't able to give my audience the tools that I felt they needed to kick ass. So the next time when Herbert and I got speaking about solving these kind of problems, measuring edge angle and things, it might have been a couple months later, but I remember saying to Herbert, oh yeah, we need this. And then it was just like a matter of days. I think it was like 2 days or something. And next thing you know, we had a graph that was measuring your edge angle on approach. And throughout my experience working closer and closer with Herbert and the rest of his team, they've just been so quick to come up with solutions and innovate and continue to seek perfection, to improve the algorithm, to improve the accuracy, to tackle all the issues that are coming up. And that's what made me want to join the Surfr app.
Yeah.
So, it was a long time of being aware of the solution. It wasn't a monetary thing that made me come aboard. For sure, there was a negotiation where Herbert and I needed to agree on terms that would work for both of us. But besides that, it was just about a passion for this being the best solution. And for those of you who don't know, I actually come from a computer science background. So I'm fairly, and I was a software developer from when I was about 17 until I was 23.
Okay.
22.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, I was also pretty good at it. I was also like winning computer Olympiads and stuff as a kid, and like top of my class in IT
And jumping high.
Yeah.
And
my point is,
my God.
my point is just some context is like I have the background to understand what it looks like when a development team is solving problems and working hard, and it was just clear that Herbert and his team were taking these problems seriously. And Woo unfortunately wasn't, so that's what made me come aboard.
But still, I mean, you took quite a leap of faith, because at the moment that you joined, I mean, there was no guarantee that it would play out the way it would play out, like in terms of adoption, users actually using it, especially in the beginning when we thought the phone needs to be on the board. And by now we know that many people won't put the phone on the board, So imagine we would have stuck to that. We definitely wouldn't have been here today. So I think it's quite nice. And I would also want to ask you, like, why did you take that leap of faith? What made that? What made that? Decide? Or were there some deciding factors?
Just, I guess, passion and belief in. Even if you're moving forward and you're not necessarily moving forward in the right direction, just seeing that you were actually putting the work in.
Right.
Yeah. It's
trust in the process, basically.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I say, Woo wasn't doing anything. I don't think there was. I don't think there was anybody writing any code there. I think there's like nothing going on. So like you were the only option, honestly. And for somebody like me who wants to, I just know the potential of, not to say I know the potential, knowing, like having a sense of what was possible,
like
and knowing that, hey, this other option's not going to get there. So I was like, well, I'm gonna bet on the Surfr app, and it's definitely been cool.
Thanks for that bet. I mean, it's been a really nice ride over the last years together. So you did amazing stuff together so far, and let's see what we can do more together, you know?
Yeah. So guys, cool. I hope that addresses my affiliation with this, but again, want to be clear, not trying to bash Woo. All right, guys, that was a really long intro and a good amount of chatting without getting into the nitty gritty details that we promised. So let's go ahead straight away into accuracy. Cool. So, shall we start with the records, jump height records?
Yeah, I mean, you asked me yesterday, right? How high do you think the highest jump is ever made?
Yeah, forget measurements. How high do you think the highest jump is ever?
I mean, what I think, I definitely sure that people have jumped over 30 meters. Like I've seen the video footage, I've seen some stuff in real life. So yes, I think it's higher than many people think. That's another topic. But what do you think? What's the highest jump you ever saw?
I mean, I saw a GoPro video from Fabian Frick.
Oh, that one, yeah.
And
it looked hot, right?
I mean, that looked monstrous. Yeah, and I don't know if he was doing a small jump or transition jump, but he just continued to go up and up and up. And I swear he went over a kite at 12 o'clock.
After already going down, right?
I think he was still going up.
Oh, he was still going up.
Okay, anyway, so I think and I also think there was that one guy in Maui who just got picked up by a gust, and that was in 2001. I think that was Eric Ick or something.
Okay.
And I think that jump, that looked like he went like 40 meters into the air or something. So
no, it might have happened for sure, and might even not be on camera, right? So and for sure people have gone jumping above 30 meters. It's just like, you know, it is super high. It's
but what about above 35 meters?
I don't know. You don't see it a lot. And I think it's like people forget how high 35 meters is, which is like a 12-floor apartment building. And if you just want to compare it, just go into one of those buildings, go to the 10th floor, 12th floor, look down. Let's say you're jumping 15 meters. You can do the same thing. You know, you go 5-6 floors and look down. Like, it's flipping high. And people are like, oh, I only jumped 10 meters today. Yeah, but you cleared you cleared a house, you know.
Well, it depends on the sensor that's being used, because there are times where people are like, I'm jumping 12 meters, and I'm like, are you?
Yeah.
You know, like, do you know how high 12 meters is?
I mean, an interesting question is like, and I think this is also some things that I've seen going around, like the debate, like how relevant is it actually that a meter is a meter? Because you can also say it doesn't matter if a meter is a meter. It's all relative, the scale, you know.
Well, as long as it is relative, linear, and consistent.
Exactly. But I do think it's important, because by using the term meter, you imply that you use the metric system, and when you use feet. So I think especially when you want to start talking about records, when it gets reported, and you cannot say like, oh, this is 35 meters, but everybody knows that is like, it's not really meters. That's not something that we want for Surfr, at least. So we are actually trying to 1 meter should be 1 meter, you know. But still, like, how do you know that 30 meters is 30 meters? That is like a different type of question, of course, because how are you gonna measure it? Like, other than with the Surfr app.
Okay, so what efforts have you made to make sure that the Surfr app is measuring, as we would say, accurately, not consistently, but that is accurately capturing the height?
Exactly, because maybe a topic we can touch later on, like accuracy and consistency is quite different things. But accuracy, like the absolute height, like this where we are sitting here is like, let's say 5 meters or so. You can do some basic testing for sure. Like we have this test setup, which is a 5 meter pole. We mount a phone at the end of the pole, and it's like behaves kind of like, how do you say this? Like an entrance gauge. Yeah, a security beam. Yeah, like it goes open, close.
Like a boom.
And it gives 5 meters. So, okay, that is some basic tests we do. There's other tests that you can do based on video analysis, of course. If you put your camera at the right angles, or even if you use multiple cameras, you could potentially do that. that's kind of the testing that we do. Obviously, the good old gut feeling, you know, you and me sitting on the beach looking and both saying independently how high you think it is, like kind of crowd wisdom, you know, which you cannot be underestimated, because if you have like 5 people looking and they're all consistently able to say this was 10 meter, and on the next one they're all saying in some error range, right? They're all saying this was 15 meter, this was 20 meter, then there is some accuracy amongst them, you know, because they are not all over the place. So this is something, and I noticed by myself that I'm super good at that. Like I jump and I say to the GoPro in the air, this is going to be 10.2. I land, it's 10.4, you know. Mm-hmm. Yesterday I had it on the camera. So you start developing a sense for looking at something and knowing how high it is on the Surfr app.
Yes, relative to your measurement, not true meters, because you aren't getting the empirical data, but you're good at predicting your Surfr
exactly.
meters.
I mean,
me too with the Surfr app actually.
We didn't try to. Actually, we did try a bunch of stuff with lasers, like jumping with lasers and pointing with lasers. It's super complicated. It's not something that we don't want to investigate further. It's something that is like is always a topic in the back of our heads. But we already did some nice things, you know, like the SpaceX boys, for example, have done that video where they had a really good camera angle and they draw some lines above the Blauberg beach. And of course you can argue, okay, the 20 meter line is maybe 19 or maybe 21. But it's not going to be much more different than that, you know, the way they calculated it. So those kind of tests we do. But obviously, the truth is that it's much more complicated than going up and down with a pole, because that is a super repetitive movement. Well, the dynamics of kiteboarding, and I think we'll talk about that, is much more complicated, you know. Mm-hmm. It's not such a simple movement, not and uniform, so much happens. Exactly.
So what high-tech methods have you investigated or considered to figure out the true height? And of course you're able to train, if you did have those true heights, you'd be able to train your algorithm better, right?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of, the way the Surfr app works, you kind of would expect, and that was also the case, that you get the true height, right? It's not like, oh, we have some kind of range of values and now we need to map it to meters. No, we calculate in meters. We calculate in seconds, in meters, in centimeters. So you would already expect that your result is actual meters, and that should represent the situation. So there's no such thing in the Surfr app like, we converted from Surfr meters to real meters. That doesn't exist. We calculate directly in meters, and if we don't come up with the accurate result, something is wrong in the algorithm, right? It's not that we say, oh, Surfr app gives 12, we know this is 10, so from now on we multiply Surfr by, take off 20%. That's not how it works.
No, sure.
But the testing, this pole is one thing. We also had a physical pole that we used in the water, which was quite hilarious, you know, people jumping next to the pole. A former colleague was insanely good of jumping any height that we want him to jump, touching the pole like exactly on 4.8 meters or on 5 meters. Bit sketchy, but it works as a test. So those things, and there is like other things possible that we didn't investigate yet, such as camera analysis, or apparently there's also some military grade GPS. GPS is actually horrible, like consumer grade GPS that we have in our phone cannot measure your jump height. But apparently there's military GPS that uses like more satellites, and that can actually also quite accurately
high precision,
high precision measure your height. So those things are super nice, but we haven't been doing all of it yet.
Sure, with you. So are you open to some guys, you know, maybe who come from like aerospace or pretty badass sophisticated industries approaching you and presenting some potential solutions that...
Yes, and it has happened, you know, people have been reaching out. We had a guy from the Elon from the TU in Delft, which is like of the world.
Technical university.
Yeah, it's one of the best universities in the world for aerospace also. He is an aerospace engineer. And he was the one also that came up with this test setup and with a bunch of other ideas. So yes, we are kind of like, not, I wouldn't say working on it. I would say like it's a team. But it's not as easy as many people think, you know. You cannot say, oh, this guy is in the air there, let's point a laser to him to see how high he is. It's such a fast movement, such a short moment in the air. And all the ideas that have come up so far were really, really difficult to execute. I think the most easy one is doing stuff with video analysis, actually. And using reference point, like your line length, for example. Those are the most, maybe not insanely accurate, but
Easy.
reasonably, easy and pretty accurate.
Yeah. Got you. So tell me, what is the improvement process for the Surfr algorithm? Like, how do you continually improve on the algorithm?
Yeah. So I think you need to have some reference data, right? If people send us an email like, oh, I think Surfr measured 8, but I think it was 12. There is some things I can do actually, but in general, we don't rely on people's feelings, but only on some external, secondary method. Let's say you also had a camera with you, preferably on the shore. So competitions like the buckle competitions have been super helpful because every jump is on camera. We see what the Surfr App said. We can do some checks like, okay, what went well, what went wrong. So that is definitely one thing. And then and another thing that we do, but we only do it for high jumps, is just looking at the raw data that is underneath of these jumps, you know, like 100 or hundreds of measurements per second on the sensors. How does the data look like? If we plot it in our charts, there you can see as a human and potentially also as an artificial intelligence solution, you can see if this jump makes sense or not. You cannot see like, oh, it said 10.2, but it's 10.3. You cannot see that, but you can see if the measurement doesn't have like calculation errors, and then you can pretty much say, yeah, this is going to be around that height, you know.
Gotcha. So I guess what I understand is like the continual improvement comes from, you have the algorithm out there, it's running, and as and when you see it getting it wrong, you investigate that specific case where it got the jump wrong. You say, why did it get it wrong? Yeah. And you say, what are the different ways that the algorithm can get a jump wrong? Yeah.
So one of the most important ways is that it maybe doesn't really detect your landing at the proper point in time. You pull like a really strong heli loop, maybe you go even up, and maybe the algorithm thinks, oh, you landed the jump, right? But you're still flying forward. So that would influence the height calculation negatively. So that is the only kind of benefit that we have on the Surfr App, that our current limitations are kind of in general affecting the height negatively, you know? So we hardly have people with a 30-meter outlier in the session. We do have people with like, what is the opposite of an outlier? When you have like, you are under measured. This is annoying for persons, but at least it doesn't ruin the leaderboards, right? Because people are like, you know, it didn't take my jump, it was higher than this. So that is one of the things, and that had mainly to do with jump detection. And to improve that, we collect more data, we train the artificial intelligence that we use, we train it, we show it more examples, and we improve with time. And yeah, we're like four years down the road, and the Surfr App is in nothing like it was like 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
So you have a library of raw data effectively, and you know where the takeoff and landing is for each of those jumps in your data set, right?
Yeah. So somebody looked at that manually, or in some cases you can also do that automatically. And this is like hundreds of gigabytes of sensor data. And once in a while we collect more. Like at the moment I'm working on an improvement, and I'm collecting heaps of data from a bunch of people, the Casatis, Giel. They are all providing data at this very moment, and I'm collecting a whole set, and I'm gonna see, you know, what went, because they are such good test persons, because they do the most insane things, like, you know, measuring a jump that is just straight up and down is so much easier than measuring a jump where what Lorenzo does, or what everybody does that is professional competing, throwing in rotations, doing crazy stuff with their boards. It becomes a different type of challenge, and to have that data coming from them and then try to get that as good as possible, then you're kind of then you're kind of like, you know that you're going to be super good for the average skier. So
Cool. I kind of want to talk about consistency. I feel like we should
cool
talk.
one. Yeah.
So Herbert, what's the difference between accuracy and consistency, and which is more important?
Which is more important is really hard to say. That's like, I'm going to think that while I'm answering. Trying to multitask now. But accuracy and consistency are definitely two different things. Like consistency is like you take two watches, an Apple Watch versus a Galaxy Watch, for example, or an Apple Watch Ultra 2 versus an Apple Watch Series 3, a really old one. And you're gonna go out, you jump around, and you see if they measure the same. That is consistency. I have seen some tests on the Surfr app where people have placed one sensor on the board, one on the wrist, one on the chest, and they jump around, and then they say like, hey, this is not consistent because the board measured 2 meters higher when I
Sorry, I just want to correct you. Those people actually say this is not accurate.
They say that is the thing.
They don't even understand the point they're trying to prove.
Exactly.
I'm sorry to say. It's like,
no, this is a really good correction, because that was actually my point also. Because that has nothing to do with accurate. That is the consistency that we are trying to measure, and you can only measure it when you have it like on the same place. Obviously, when you put one sensor on your board and one on your wrist, it won't measure the same if you kick your board up, because your board went higher. Mm-hmm. So, and people will say like, hey, but that is like, so on Surfr it really depends what you pick. Do you choose the board? Do you choose the watch? How high you can go? But I don't see it like that, because even if you say like, oh, we would only support watches, people can still bring the sensor everywhere they want in their jump. They can raise their arm, they can put the arm lower. The same for board-mounted devices. If you have your phone on your board might be beneath you, it might be in your hand beside you, it might be above you. So your sensor, especially when it's on the board, won't be always on the same location. It can be anywhere, basically, relative to your body. So it's a really kind of misconception, like, oh, the sensor is always on the same location. No, it's not. Like, you and I, we jump the same height, but you go inverted. You will measure a few meters higher.
That's not why I go higher than you, though.
If you would go higher.
Actually, Herbert beat me in the last boost off we had. But really? That aside...
10 centimeters.
Okay, let's move on. So I guess the point is, if you want to measure consistency and see how consistent the devices are, then you ought to put them in the same location.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you are going to get it's correct to get different heights coming out.
Like imagine I do a jump with a watch and a board, and I kick my board up, and both it would magically say 10.1. That would be weird, because my board went higher, and that is about what do we actually measure. What do we measure? We measure the displacement of the sensor from its start position till how high it went. And I'm not sure if that's part of this topic, or maybe it is, right?
We'll come to it later, I think.
About what is the best
different sensor locations.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll talk about that in a bit, I think.
But yeah.
But accuracy, I think to answer the question, which is more important, accuracy or consistency? Well, I realize if you are measuring accurately, consistency is implied.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
But if you're consistent, that does not imply accuracy.
No, you can be
consistently inaccurate.
Yeah. Like you jump 5 meters and both of your sensors give 40 meters. They are super consistent. They're also super inaccurate. So it's different concepts. They are easily to be confused. They're easily to be misrepresented. And if you really want to, and they're both important, like there's no doubt about that, you need to be super consistent, otherwise you will never be accurate. And you need to be accurate, otherwise you'll never be consistent. It's like really closely related. And I think they're both super important. We do a lot for consistency. We test a lot. And obviously we have a bunch of different phones, a bunch of different watches that we go out at the same time. And then secondarily, we also make sure that it's like actually representing how high a person is going,
Awesome. So great point there. How accurate or how precise do you think the Surfr app is?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I would say anybody that knows about this technology and what is the underlying mathematics and how it's done, should admit that it's not 100% accuracy, you know, like it is not centimeter precision. It's not rocket science. It's a fairly good indication. It depends a lot on how the accuracy is influenced by what you do. Like if you start doing crazy stuff with your board, you start flipping it around, you drop it from the sky. Yeah, that will affect the accuracy by a lot. Like people nowadays, they actually, you know, throw the board in the middle of the air. Not the average kiter, but let's say
some guys do board flips and stuff.
Yeah. Yes, or just a tic-tac. Like it affects the accuracy for sure. And so I would say it's a very good indication. A very good indication. I wouldn't bet my life on it. Like, okay, we're gonna like that challenge that we did, where I jumped 10 centimeters higher than you. Honestly, you might have jumped a couple of centimeters higher than me as well, or maybe up to a meter even, you know. I think on a 20 meters jump, I would say 5 to 10% a margin on accuracy, which is a lot, but it's the truth. So this is also why we should think about, is like single highest jump, is that really like the best metric of realizing how high you're jumping? Or, you know, at Surfr App, we've also thought about things like taking your average of your 5 highest jump in your session as a metric to kind of like compensate for this margin of error. And this margin of error that exists, and I know there's people trying to deny that it exists, but it's there. It's a consequence of the mathematics of the double integration that you're doing. And I think everybody that kites within a certain range, if you do simple movements, if you just jump straight up, straight down. I'm kiting with an Apple Watch, and that's mainly what I do. And I'm telling you, I told you before, like I know I jump 10 points something. I know it when I'm in the air, and then it turns out to be like that. So if you do basics jumps, I think the accuracy is higher. But if you start introducing board flips, you do crazy things with your arms, for sure you might introduce up to 5% error.
With you. So I guess what I'm hearing you say, and I guess what correlates with my experience, seeing footage in competitions versus footage from normal riders and coaching, etc. If you're doing like a uniform jump, pretty damn high accuracy, and high consistency, not that much of an issue in detecting those.
Yeah.
But then when you get to the irregular things, like guys doing board offs and spinning around, I've seen it get wrong with that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of then there's like a second set of like, okay, more complicated ones where
exactly
things get wrong. Maybe guys catch a gust, they start doing multiple heli loops at a board too early, etc. As we talk about. Let's talk about some of the things that can result in an inaccurate measurement, specifically within the case of the Surfr App.
Like including the board mount or excluding the board mount?
Let's start with the board mount.
Yeah, like because the board mount is probably the most challenging one of the three. And also the one that probably potentially goes up to this 10%. I think for watches and wetsuit might be a bit less. But board mounts...
why is board mount more challenging?
Because the board, like you're on the water, with your board, so your phone gets so much vibrations and impact from the water. And actually, on the basis of what we are measuring, we are depending on these measurements of the gyroscope, of the accelerometer. We talk a little bit about it later. And if those measurements get all the time distracted, like technically we call it noise in your signal. Like you're not interested to see all this beating from your board on the water, but it's there, it's part of the signal, and it influences the accuracy. So, and then the second thing that you have with the board mount is that it's like the place that is like the easiest to manipulate, you know? Like in terms of kicking your board up, doing the board flips, your board falling from the sky.
Right, but that's not an issue with, that's not an issue of it being inaccurate. It's just that it's taken to a different point.
Yes, and that plus
but at the end of the day,
the more movement to the sensor, the more inaccuracy you introduce.
So what you're saying is when you're riding and there's a lot of noise, that noise can actually throw off the gyroscope.
Absolutely.
In the moment when you take off, and then the sensor's perception of where X, Y, and Z is actually can be incorrect, which extrapolates to an inaccurate jump when you. Okay.
So what I see in the Surfr App, just statistically looking at it, we get relatively, like at the moment in the Surfr App, it's around 8% people is on the board mount. The rest is on the watch and the phone. And we see like percentage-wise, most of our problematic jumps, outlier here and there, or other problems, it comes from the board mount.
Like even though it's only 10%.
Yeah.
So 10% of the sections being submitted.
90% of the problems. 10%.
That's funny, man.
Yeah. So this also really made us think, like, should we really continue the board mount? I think if we want to continue on the board mount, we need to, we need like another strategy, and kind of we thought, nah, this is not it for us, at least, you know. We're gonna focus our energy to watches. Of course, a watch you can also still swing around, and we talk a little bit about cheating later. People will probably try to do that. But other sensor locations, like a phone in your chest, that's really hard to manipulate, you know. You cannot. Yeah, you can hit the phone in the middle of the air, but it most likely will cause your jump to be missed. So this is the thing that, you know, if people try to manipulate or try to do these things and the jump gets missed as a result, I think that is then the best outcome, you know.
So back to the things that result in an inaccurate measurement. If I said, let's rephrase it. If I said to you, Herbert, your mission is to go like break your app today, like what can you do to just like get out there and get the most inaccurate results you can? What would you do?
What would I do?
Forget about the board mount and its.
I mean, I would just program myself. If Herbert 5 meters plus. No, I mean, what would I do? I honestly,
assuming you were just like infinitely capable, like one of these pro riders as well, because I don't think you're capable right now of doing like a board of lay back roll, for example.
Like yesterday, I had this boost off, right, and I wanted to jump the highest, and I wasn't doing the cloud fisting, as you call it. That's Guys, really nice.
Can we just get a comment? Can everyone just say how good the name is, cloud fisting? And I think that came from the quick release. You guys got to follow the quick release on Instagram.
Yeah, that was hilarious. That was really hilarious. And I was doing a boost off with a friend, with Carlos. I was not doing it, and I saw him doing that. I was like, what the fuck, man? Yeah, now I have to do it because there is dinner at stake. But honestly, that is like kind of the best thing that I would know to do, because all other things, that would like most likely result in your jump not being recorded. So if you start like doing really crazy stuff with your wrist or you hit your phone, it most likely will affect your jump in a negative way. Like it will be not recorded, it will be measured super low, like 2-3 meters while you were jumping.
Because it aborts early, right?
Yeah, it aborts early. So
gotcha.
So that's what I tried to say in the beginning, and what the current limitations that the Surfr app has are not the worst limitations to have, because at least we're not putting people on the leaderboards like, oh, this guy has all of a sudden 30 meters out of the blue, didn't do anything. That situation we luckily don't have too often. I don't say we have it never, but you know, we don't have that too much.
You kind of have a situation where you get I think you get false negatives rather than false positives, is the saying.
If positive is like up and negative is down.
Yeah, positive is like you get rewarded for.
You get more like
you get told you went high when you didn't.
Exactly. It's more like I went higher, but you know.
Yeah. So I want to answer that question. The two things that I've seen throw off the sensor, and this is not for those uniform jumps. It's for backle competitors. I've seen when guys do a jump and then they crash and they go below the water level by a good few meters. I've seen the jump abort late, and I also see it in the air time.
Yeah.
So that's a case where I've seen jumps get over measured. And then also I think if I look at like Scott Baronson's, he had a big back roll with 3 rotations and a board off, and I think that was over measured. I think it said 19 meters on the app. I think it was more like 16.
Okay.
But I think the fact that he had his wrist on the board and he was spinning around, I think that centrifugal force results in like a little bit of a bonus. And then, you know, you got to ask
So
yourself.
that's the tip, right? Then.
Yeah.
Do 4 rotations
Yeah.
and hope for the bonus. I mean, I do. There's for sure an effect of crashing or of doing crazy things in the air, and the effect. Obviously our mission is to get the effect smaller and smaller, right? That's what we try to do, and for that we came a long way. And I think an interesting thing is, I believe we have it in this topic as well, is like how to deal with the fact that you're improving over time. Because for sure in the past there were situations that slipped through, like the very first versions of Surfr weren't as accurate as that it is now, right? So this is also an interesting topic to think about, like how to deal with it. I think in general Surfr has the perception of measuring too low. Obviously we don't believe that is the case. So we are in a relatively easy starting position, but we will maybe introduce new concepts in the future, like verified world record jumps. Like every jump currently in the Surfr App over 20 meters and over 10 seconds airtime, we log like a bunch of sensor data, you know. So whenever we want, we can request a jump and we can verify it, at least, like, you know, make sure that the calculations were as accurate as possible.
Sorry, just want to fill in the gap for the audience there. So
Sure.
the issue that Herbert's talking about right now is, how do you tackle issues of previous jumps when the algorithm was less accurate at previous stages where it did get it wrong, and now you risk having a leaderboard that has overly measured jumps, and perhaps people being a bit demotivated, or cases where somebody's allegedly jumped their record and they didn't actually, and they think they've jumped 13 meters, and then they're struggling to hit that 13 meter mark, and they're like, wow, have I gotten worse? And it's actually just a matter of, well, maybe you got lucky that one time and the sensor measured incorrectly.
Yeah.
But I think just before we get into those little details, against that detail, I just want to question the importance of having a super accurate jump height measurement. I think some people, you know, if you were to ask them how important is that it's super accurate, some people might say, oh, it's super important that it's pinpoint accurate, otherwise I don't want to use it. But the truth is that with the technology that we have right now, we don't have any reason to believe that you can have pinpoint level accuracy. It might be possible, right? I think you and I have spoken about this. It might be possible. We still need to discover what's possible in the future.
For sure.
But is it safe to assume for the time being that the method of using this technology has its limitations, and until we get evidence otherwise, we should assume that it will never be pinpoint accurate?
Yeah.
Is that a fair statement?
Yes. I mean, like the gyroscope, the accelerometer, what we use at the bases, they are known for that they have limitations, you know, and they are used in aerospace, they're using in other fields as well, much more expensive ones. But even those, like the ones that cost tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, that they use in aerospace engineering, like inherently on the device, it's not a laser, you know. So, and it's a calculation. So for sure, it's not 100% accurate, and you can improve your accuracy by building like really good software, using as much data points as possible. And that's what we do, you know, and that's how we improve the accuracy. And I think when you talk about people that might be on the leaderboard right now that didn't actually jump that high, there's a few things that Surfr does. Like, first of all, before you even can post your session, and this feature was there in Surfr from the very beginning. If you're jumping always 8 in your session, and then all of a sudden you have 13 meters, you jump 113, Surfr will say like, hey, this jump is suspicious. Do you want to approve it in your session? Yeah, some people will do that, and sometimes it's also true. It's true that you can have one outlier jump. Most people are actually...
I've had it where it's like, was this a valid jump? And I'm like, yes, it was. Of course, I jumped the highest. No, I'm just kidding. But I did have one really big outlier jump in the session, and that's often how my sessions are. But I guess your point is you give people opportunity to
moderate it themselves. Exactly. There's self-moderation, then there's moderation that we do.
You get jumps that are flagged as suspicious,
yes.
and you can remove them as an admin.
We do that, yeah.
I can do that too. So
and
don't
there is
piss me off.
there is no shame in that. The Surfr App once in a while matches an error. I mean, we do. Let me not exaggerate, but I think we do around tens of thousands, like between 50 and 100,000 jumps every day. So for sure, there is going to be, even if you have an error, if you would have, say, 0.1% of jumps have a problem, that is still like,
for every 1,000 jumps, one jump.
That is a lot, you know. So we and then we don't moderate obviously everything that is not significant, everything below 10 meters or so. But yeah, there's stuff that gets flagged to us. We moderate it. We look at the data and we remove jumps. And people sometimes get upset about that. Happens also.
But I think one of the things that's happened in big air kiting and in the space of measuring jumps that's been a bit of a disservice to the technology and the whole community is that I think Woo has claimed that it is super accurate, that it is pinpoint accurate, and as a result, everybody has this desirable expectation that this thing says I jumped 18 meters, so I can tell my wife with confidence that I jump 18 meters, and I do deserve to sleep in the bed tonight.
It's really funny, like, that's a good one. But I mean, if you want to fool yourself, everybody can fool themselves. But where is the fun in that then? Like, for example, a little side topic, but related to this, is our Garmin watches currently are not showing like accurate heights when you're on the water. It's an indication. You don't see it in the Surfr App. You go with your Garmin, you see your height on your watch. And there was this guy a couple of weeks ago was here. I was also on the water. And he came off the water and he said, yeah, my Garmin said I jumped 12. It was a super light day. I was jumping 9 maximum. I thought, nah, never possible that you jump 12. But let's see in the Surfr App, because how it works for Garmin at the moment, your heights get calculated after your session, right? So your Garmin syncs to the Surfr App and then you see your heights. So I said, I hope for you, but I don't think it was 12. And then he was all of a sudden disappointed. He was like, yeah, it's only 8. He said, but yeah, now I think about it, it didn't really feel like 12. But it's so easy, the psychology of seeing a number. It's really funny if you ask people like, how high do you think this jump was? And then only look at the metrics afterwards, you know? You come off the water, you jump in the air, you think like, how high was this jump? And then you look instead of the other way around. Because as soon as you see the number, it's the number.
Yeah, you get attached to it, right? Yeah. There's such a huge bias from our own, I'm just going to say our egos and our desire to be like validated as a high jumping kiter.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I've experienced that myself too. And it's tough to have conversations with people about these things because we build our own self-identity on it so often. We're like, I've progressed, I'm jumping high, yes. And this is like the narrative that we tell ourselves. And then when something comes in and threatens this narrative and this sense of self and self-worth, we kind of want to reject it, which I think is why it just convolutes the whole discussion so much more. And it makes it difficult to have a discussion where you can say, this sensor is precise to within 5%, and that's okay. And we're all playing this game, and it's pretty damn good. It's pretty damn good. That's actually, that makes it competable. It makes it, to me, it makes it, it's accurate enough that we can go out there and have a boosting session and put some put some money down on it, bet a dinner on it, take it seriously enough that we can and with that within that degree of margin.
And also if you make enough jumps, you know,
and enjoy the game, you know. And I think it's like I said, I think there's just been a bit of a disservice to the technology that some people have claimed it's super accurate.
No, like I mean, I have that discussions a lot with people that ride Surfer versus something else, and then come like, you know, like even recently. If someone was riding with the Surfer and was riding with the Woo on the board, Woo measured 35, Surfer measured 26. You know, came back to me, said like, okay, you know, it's 35. I want to communicate that. I said, show me the video. I see the video, it's not 35. You know, so I think many people want to be associated with a number. If for everybody it's inflated, I understand that you want that because other people also you know, had the same inflation in their numbers. But yeah, for me, it's much more important to be closer to the truth than closer to people's egos. And unfortunately, sometimes you lose people because of that.
Yeah. Well, I got to commend you for staying true to the original mission, knowing that you do lose some people to that.
Yeah.
That you have made some of those sacrifices to.
And also,
be truthful.
Some people respond super nice also, you know.
Yeah.
It's not that everybody's like, oh, fuck this, I'm not using it anymore. Some people, oh, yeah,
Fair enough.
I see what you mean. And yeah, it's not nice to hear it initially, but I mean, 26 meters is still much higher than I jump.
It must be very difficult to deal with all the egos that come through in these customer service emails and the.
It's hilarious. I mean, we love our users, that's first of all.
Yeah.
But there is definitely some things going on that are you have to find funny, because otherwise.
Bro, context. Context is like, I got in Bloberg. I do a massive jump. I'm so stoked with it. I get my record. And I go to the bar that night and I'm the fucking hero. All my mates are like, yeah, you jumped your record. Next day, it gets removed. And I'm like, what? I'm not the hero anymore. I was the hero last night in Pacalolo's, and now Herbert and his team from the Surfr App have stripped away my jump. Of course that's going to sting. Of course that hurts. And it sucks.
Yeah.
But let's just be grateful that you guys are pursuing accuracy and the truth.
Yes.
Yeah.
And obviously, the less we have to do it, the better.
Yeah.
And we really try to avoid it. And also, of course, if somebody jumps 5 times 15 meters in a session, and we're not going to look at, and there's one jump of 50 meters of those 5 is flagged, we're not actually going to look at that because he jumped 4 other of 50 meters.
It's probably legit, eh?
So that is also with a lot of these people that are on the leaderboard, like a little bit tagging back to where we came from. There is people on the leaderboard that in earlier versions of the Surfr App might not have jumped that high on that particular jump, but I'm pretty confident looking at the height leaderboards right now, who's on top of there, that they have done that maybe at some point.
Yeah.
And that also gives me a little bit of slack of you know, just the latest jumps from the leaderboards. Instead, I think maybe it's nicer to for a future version add some verification on all these high jumps and kind of start a verified leaderboard, you know.
Cool. So I want to explain that to you guys in layman's terms. So what the Surfr App is doing constantly, and feel free to chime in or interrupt me. What the Surfr App is doing constantly is it's collecting this raw data, and then it does processing on this raw data to say, okay, here was a jump, this is how high it was. Here was a takeoff, here's a landing, this is how high it was. And what you end up seeing on the leaderboards, of course, is just the result of the processing of that raw data. Now, what Herbert's implemented in the latest versions of the app that he was saying earlier is whenever there's a really high jump recorded, that data actually gets stored. For me and a couple of all the team riders, we actually have all our raw data being stored. But for you guys who are using the standard version of the Surfr App, the one that's available on the app stores, you guys actually, it doesn't write all that raw data to file, but when there's a big jump, it'll store that data. Herbert can request it later. It'll get uploaded to him and his team, and they can actually look at that raw data, validate it, and to a pretty high degree of confidence, tell you if it's legit or not.
Exactly.
So now going forward, at some point you're going to roll out this verified, right?
Yeah,
so verified jump.
We're already verifying stuff. Even last week was somebody that had like this crazy jump. Looks valid at first glance, 30 meter with a board mount. Of course, board mount, I said already, is one extra red flag for us. But you look at the GPS map, you see the data, look at the raw data, and you are actually able to say like, okay, this was very likely true. So, and then you leave it. And it does happen, you know, if there are so many people kiting with the app, like thousands every day, for sure, once in a week, somebody jumps like a crazy jump, like really high, or takes a really strange gust. So what initially always looks to you as suspicious, on statistically is very likely to happen once a week.
With you.
The more we have, the more it will happen.
With you. Okay, so yeah, that's very cool. I guess the cool thing is for a guy like me who I would like to see the leaderboard getting cleared up in future, that there are only valid jumps. So at some point in future, we'll probably start filtering the leaderboard by valid jumps, and it'll be like maybe
By
from
verified,
verified jumps, and maybe it starts from October onwards or something. And
yeah, it would be nice. Yeah, there are no promises if and when it would be available. I mean, we do verification, but yeah, something like that would.
It's on the backlog, right? You got a bunch of feature requests and things that you're working on, which is also super cool. I mean, this app is much more than just tracking jump heights, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
Before we move on from this accuracy topic, kickers. Common question: how do kickers affect the jump height measured?
Yes, super interesting. Like Surfr App measures your starts measuring when you start going up. You know?
Ascending, yeah.
Yeah, when you start ascending indeed. So if you take a kicker, the moment you start going up, it starts measuring, and then there is things to say for and against that, for sure. Like obviously when you leave the kicker, at some point you are actually more meters above the water than you are above the top of the kicker, right? Because you left the kicker, that let's say you have a 3 meter kicker and you jump off the kicker, you jump 5 meters up, that would calculate as 8 meter on the Surfr App.
5 meters from the tip of the kicker.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So the kicker 3 meters, the jump itself 5 meters. But then when you would think about this person in the middle of the air, and you would look at him from the shore, he is 8 meters above the water, not above that takeoff point.
The level of the ocean.
Yeah, but assuming that there is like some normal wavy conditions beneath him, he will be at some point about 8 meters above the water. That is why people jump the highest with kickers. This is not only the only reason, but for sure it helping a little bit, because you get a little bonus. I mean, there's arguments for and against, and so far we have been sticking with the arguments on the for side, because obviously we could do something about it. We can see some data that would indicate about the acceleration because of the kicker, but it's difficult. So yeah, for now we stay to measuring the whole thing, including the kicker.
Cool, with you. And what about loops and the effect of loops on accuracy?
I think it's the same thing as obviously when you loop or when you do sand jump, you introduce acceleration to the sensor, which is acceleration not necessarily like vertical, but more horizontal acceleration.
So in theory, it shouldn't affect the height.
It shouldn't affect.
But in practice, can it?
I would say it can, as much as it can like the other things that we talked about, like, because it's kind of like introducing noise to the sensor, introducing stuff that might distract it, like same as doing rotation, same as doing board tic-tacs. All of that will affect to some extent the accuracy, like when we do the pole movement that we talked about before, we do it 1,000 times, we get 1,000 times 5 meters. Maybe 1 centimeter more, maybe 1 centimeter less, maybe 2 even, but that's the margin of error. So measuring something the same every single time is easy when the movement is the same. But when the movement is not the same, who will say? We don't really know, because we didn't do like 1,000 kite loops, 1,000 back rolls, 1,000 front rolls. We don't have those type of data sets. So I honestly don't know how big the effect is. I do assume that there is an effect. Yeah.
Well, I mean, in fairness, I think it's easy for us as people who are new to loops, or when we come to loops, to be like, wow, this is so radical. It is such a massive acceleration. But in fact, the acceleration is not that huge. It feels massive when a loop kicks. But as you get better and better, and you get better at coping with it, it's generally not actually such a rapid, abrupt acceleration. I would argue that the acceleration of the loop kicking in and pulling me downwind is much less than the consequence of me just shaking my wrist like that. Like, you cannot
for sure.
So,
and honestly, I was I was doing my kite loops, and I was always getting lower results, you know. But then when I saw them on camera, I thought, okay, I'm actually not doing them as high as I think. So I really don't think it would result in extra height, at least based on my personal experience and what I've seen. In less height, maybe from your own perspective, your own feeling, like so many people pull their first loops, it feels like so radical, it feels so high. But I like our first question to anybody that sends us an email, like it's measuring too low.
Do you have a video?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then 9 out of 10 times you see the video and it's like, yeah, what else do we need to
Some funny
say?
ones.
So
Yeah.
I remember no hate at all to some of the users, because actually it makes our day sometimes. Like we had one time somebody.
Are we about to hear a funny customer service experience?
I told you about it, right?
Oh, dude. Okay. No, we're not going to mention any names at all, but let's hear some funny shit.
Yes, there is one. I think I sent you the video also. Somebody said, yeah, it's not measuring my jumps, you know, at all. So we always first ask, how high do you think you are jumping? And they sent back, you know, I'm beginner, but maybe 3 meter, 4 meter. Then I already know, okay, this is
And
this
then,
is gonna be fun.
And then I saw the video.
And then we sent, can you send the video? And then we got this video sent in with those jumps, you know, and the board or the body is barely
leaving the water.
Barely.
Less than a meter height.
Yes.
For sure.
And then you have to say like, hey, sorry, like the Surfr App only measures from 1.5 meter and up. Actually, at the moment, from 1 meter as well, if you want.
But that is a tough, very awkward conversation to have.
Yeah.
You don't want to burst someone's bubble, right? But it's like, man, like you kind of didn't jump, bro. Like,
But for a lot of people, they take it as motivational, and they're like, you know, okay, I'm not jumping high.
yes, respect to anybody who can take that and be like, true, fair enough.
Let's go.
So Herbert, explain to me, like I'm in 9th grade, how does the Surfr App work?
Yeah, obviously that's a question I get a lot, including from people that have like no technical background whatsoever. And I mean, one thing that I think is important to understand, there is no such thing as a height sensor in your phone, you know. There is not like one simple sensor that says like, oh, you're on 10 meters high. Actually, there is in some devices, but that's like a barometer, which is based on air pressure. And you often see it when you go on a long hiking track, like with Strava or something. It's able to plot your elevation, right? Which it can do based on a barometer or sometimes based on GPS data that is available. But yeah, that's not of any use to the Surfr App. So at the very basic, we measure acceleration. Just to start with that part, and acceleration is what it literally says. It's how quickly is something accelerating at a given point in time. So imagine I'm driving on the highway. I'm driving 100 kilometers per hour on the highway consistently. I'm just driving 100. My acceleration is 0. I'm not accelerating. I'm not going faster. I'm not deaccelerating. I'm not going slower. So my acceleration in that point in time is 0. So imagine somebody takes off from the water. At the beginning is accelerating, but at some point the person reaches the peak speed of going up, and then the acceleration goes down to 0, and then eventually you deaccelerate even. So, but this acceleration and doing some mathematics with it, you can derive the height of that. Because once you know how fast I started running to the gate and for how long I was going there, you can calculate how long it took me to get there, and from that you can then you can calculate how fast I was going there, and from the speed you can then calculate the distance, the height. So that's what you do. You take acceleration, you convert it to the speed, and then when you have the speed, you can calculate the distance or the height. The basic is not really that hard, even for non-technical people. It's like you program it basically in 5 lines of code. You know, this basic essential doing the double integration.
So, okay, cool. I think let's keep it on the grade 9 level for now. Let's keep going on that. And then for the more geeky guys out there, let's get into the hardcore details in a little bit.
Yeah.
But I like this train that we're on, so let's keep going.
Yeah, sure. Like, I mean, and there's the other sensor that we have, the gyroscope, because one thing that's important for you to know is we have this acceleration, and the phone measures the acceleration in 3 directions. So it has a sensor that can measure this direction of acceleration, this direction of acceleration, and this direction of acceleration. Like, so there's an axis like this, there's an axis like that, and there is like an axis like this. So if I would keep my phone like this and I go up, the only thing that basically interesting to me to measure how high this phone went is the acceleration measured by the z-axis, by the vertical axis. Yeah. Now imagine if I would solely rely on that vertical axis. I would just calculate with this vertical axis. My sensor would only work if the phone would be in this position. Now if my phone is in this position and I'm doing the same movement, z is measuring 0. So I'm doing the same movement, my jump height is now all of a sudden 0. So you not only need to know the acceleration, you also need to know in which direction this acceleration is going. And to know that, you need to know the orientation of the phone at all time, or of the device. You need to know, is the phone facing up? Is it upside down? The exact orientation in 3D space of the phone throughout all of your kite session, throughout all of your jump. That is what we are tracking. And that's actually the most complicated part. So to be able to track your phone in 3D space, and it's pretty cool once you can do that, because you can also plot it. We know how the phone is going, you know. So, and once you know how the phone is going, you know which acceleration you have to use. And then you can calculate your jump height eventually. So that is the very basics. And I guess the complicated part comes in, like, it's not like, I mean, I think you asked me at one point, like, oh, you know, are we not, spilling some proprietary Surfr information on how to do this? Is now anybody going to start the next Surfr app? I don't think so, because to understand that this is how you need to do it, or what you need to do, that is really easy. I got that, like, I mean, I started the Surfr app, you Google a bit and you understand what you need to do. But then to actually do it, then to accomplish consistency across devices, to do a proper jump detection, I think that is where our real intellectual property is. And it's not about explaining to people how it works.
No, for sure not. For sure not. I'm with you, eh? So, okay.
Did you understand it, or was it still?
No, if I put my my ninth grade goggles on and I try to perceive what you said, it makes perfect sense. Excellent explanation. Okay. That's very cool. Okay. And now, if we were to like go completely wild and we said, explain it to me like I'm a PhD student.
Okay. So people can tune out right now that they come back 5 minutes from now. I mean, it's indeed it's the same basis, right? The gyroscope and the accelerometer. But what is complicated is those sensors, they are prone to drift, and drift means, like, actually, I don't need, if we're talking to your target audience right now, I don't.
Some of the guys are proper nerds.
I don't need to explain what the drift is, but let's do it anyway. Drift is like, you know, your sensor. If you would just use your gyroscope, which is the main sensor to find the orientation. If you would just listen to the gyroscope, every time you calculate with it, you will be, let's say, 0.00001% off of the truth. And that you keep staying off of the truth, and eventually you think the phone is upside down, but in reality the phone is facing a complete other direction, because you have been calculating with this error all the time.
What causes that from a physics perspective?
I mean, the sensors aren't perfect, and like somewhere behind the comma there will always be drift, right? If I say how much is the distance from here to that pole over there, and we're gonna measure this with a tape ruler, we're gonna say it's 10.535367, but we're not gonna go infinite decimals there.
No, sure.
So. And if I would then I would use that measurement, and I would use it into a next measurement as a factor, and all of this time I wouldn't be precise, like 100 positions after the comma, all of these measurements, and do that 100 times per second. I'm taking a little bit of error, and eventually your error becomes so big that it doesn't make any sense anymore. So that is why luckily there's another sensor in your phone, the accelerometer, which always can measure gravity. Your accelerometer doesn't just. If I would pull up my accelerometer on this phone right now, it would measure
1G.
It would measure 1G in the Z direction. So based on that, purely based on that, I also know that this phone is in this position. So we use that as a second factor, and that's called sensor fusion, to compensate for this drift of the gyroscope.
So the unit of measure that comes out of both of them is like meters per second
Squared.
Okay.
Meter per second per second.
Okay.
So your acceleration per second. And I mean,
but the gyroscope has an accompanying, so it has an XYZ, and it'll tell you
it also has an XYZ in the same directions as the accelerometer.
So you'll get your gyroscope's going to output 3 data points.
Exactly.
And that's the amount of acceleration for X, for Y, for Z.
Like rotational speed, or there's probably like an exact term for it that I don't have like on top of my mind.
Rotational
right
inertia, I think.
Yeah, it's that is what a gyroscope does.
Okay.
But if you would only listen to that, you cannot only listen to that, because imagine even the gyroscope doesn't even know in which position the phone started, right? So you need, and to know the start position of the phone and to compensate for the gyroscope drift, you use the accelerometer, because it can measure, beside acceleration that we talked about, it measures acceleration. A part of this acceleration, it will always measure gravity as well. And still challenging, because when I go up really quickly, how much of this acceleration is the gravity that is measuring, and how much is the actual acceleration is then also a factor. But like that, you can figure out the position of your phone in a 3D world. And that's called sensor fusion. There's a bunch of algorithms that do that. Like there's complicated one, like Kalman filter is like a really, really popular one. There is like more simple sensor fusion algorithms. But all of the devices that we know nowadays, like all of our wearables, all this stuff that create a digital representation in a game, like a Wii console or something, like, the physical devices that you have in your hand for playing tennis before your TV, it's all the same principle. Accelerometer, gyroscope, sensor fusion, and trying to create the best possible digital image of what you think the orientation of the device is. And that is the first big challenge. It's I wouldn't say it's the biggest challenge. I think the biggest challenge is in like doing a proper jump detection, like
detecting takeoff and landing.
Yeah, detecting takeoff and landing indeed. And that was something that initially at Surfr we tried to do, like just hardcore programming, because you can imagine, okay, a landing, especially on a board, I hit the water. You see a peak in the data, so that must be the landing. But then somebody creates a peak in the data mid-air, or somebody pulls a super strong heli loop, and it also looks like a peak in the data, but it's not a landing. So really quickly it became really complicated, because Surfr supports watches, supports phones, and we were like, this is not the way to go, like programming this, trying to program this stuff. So let's see if artificial intelligence can be of use. And it turned out it could, because I think I just started like training a neural network with some examples, and like so quickly it was better than my already programmed solution, which I probably programmed for months, for many months actually. And then
months of actual coding time.
And I just could throw it all through the shredder once I realized, like, okay, this AI is doing a better job. Give him like around 60 different data points, 100 times per second, and it's able to say better than I am able to program what the end of a jump is.
And you're doing more than 100 data points a second, right?
It depends on the device, but minimum 100 times per second. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool, man. So the AI stuff. I guess that's a nice little.
This was the 5 minutes more technical, or you want it even more crazy?
No, I think that's cool. I think that was awesome. Nice to learn a little bit there. Before we get into the artificial intelligence stuff, so hardware versus software, which is more important? Not sure if that's even a clever question, but tell me.
I mean, it's a good question. I would think I would say it definitely helps if you have good hardware. And the hardware that we have these days, you know, it is pretty good, like an Apple Watch and the stuff they put inside. But I think it depends a little bit where you place a sensor, because and I think we might overlap a little bit with the next topic. But if you put a sensor on your board, having really good hardware is more important, because the better your hardware is, the less of this noise you will have, the less sensor drift you will have. And if you put it on your board where you have all the time this vibrations and crazy things going on, you need to have like it's definitely helpful to have a good sensor. If you put it on your wrist, if you put it on your chest, where there is very little noise going on, then software is much more important. Like all of our accuracy improvements, accomplishing consistency, it's all software based, you know. Even like there is some wild assumptions about the Surfr App, that if I didn't calibrate it like exactly on a flat surface, now it's measuring 3 meters higher. It's just not true, you know. It doesn't really matter. We need like a basic calibration. We need a basic sensor. So there is like some minimum requirements on the sensor, and there is phones that are incompatible. If you install like
let's be specific. What are the minimum requirements in order to run the Surfr App?
Yeah. So one of the 100 measurements per second is one of the requirements. Not every device is capable of doing that, unfortunately.
But most are, eh?
But still a bunch of Android Wear OS watches, like all the TIC watches, for example, are all stuck on 50 measurements per second. It's like we get a lot of people on our support, like, hey, my watch is not compatible. What can we do about it? Nothing, because it's not giving enough data to do it accurately. That is one thing. Then there's also the range of the sensor. It's a little bit technical again, but we want sensors that have a decent range. There is we don't accept sensors that are that cannot measure a really fast acceleration. Stay awake, eh? We can do a break in a little bit.
Keep going, bro.
Okay, don't worry.
I inside yawned. I was like, I'm gonna hold this yawn in my face, and it came out through my eyeballs.
Yeah.
All right. So.
But sure, no. If a phone cannot measure, Also, I read something quite funny somewhere. Like, oh yeah, if I use a phone that can only measure 4G, I calibrate it at an angle, I have it bouncing around my neck, then I all of a sudden get different results on the Surfr App. Yeah, it's not true, because we don't accept phones that measure only 4G. We don't.
But to be clear, when he says 4G, he's not talking about cellular. He's talking about like G's as in gravity.
Yes, as in the range.
Units.
Exactly. We don't. We really have put in some restrictions on the devices, and we do run a basic sensor test if your device is compatible. And then if it's compatible, you will see. Take an Android phone versus an Apple Watch to the water, or put two different watches on your. In general, it should be fairly good. There has been like some. Maybe like one or two devices that we kind of had to put on the blacklist, but we did so much testing, man. I've been going around with 7-8 phones at the same time. Like your wetsuit, you're completely packed with random phones. You put them on purposely. You put them in all different directions, and they give consistent results. So that is why I am quite confident to say that the sensor itself, of course, it needs to do a basic decent job, but it's not gonna help. It's not gonna help for our purpose, measuring on the chest and on the watch to try to improve the hardware a lot. What will help is try to improve the software, and this is also why we don't have any ambitions to make any hardware ourselves, as we don't consider it needed. Like try to catch up as a hardware manufacturer. Let's assume I would want to make hardware as Surfr. For sure, Apple and all these big companies, they are innovating at a much faster pace than us, So by the time we have a product and it's like 3-4 years old, like the watch that you have on your wrist is like computers from, I don't know, 5 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
So they get so much better so quickly. There's no way you can compete with those companies.
So software's more important, eh? I mean, you can't have a shitty sensor, but assuming you have decent sensors in the phone, then it comes down to, like, it doesn't help to take. You can't beat a shitty algorithm with really good hardware.
No.
You run the wrong algorithm on the right data, you're going to get wrong results.
Exactly. And it's so much more about the...
And the bar is actually set quite low in terms of what is good enough in terms of sensor quality, because that which is available on the market is so good already for the most part.
Gotcha. And it's not one thing to add there. It's like, it's not that we're talking about expensive sensors, like this MEMS sensor that is a gyroscope, a accelerometer.
The little computer components that these guys
like
put in phones.
It's
like
cheap.
Sense, no?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like really cheap sensors.
Like if they can sell you a phone for 200 euros, you know that little sensor is costing like
And I know it might as well be the same sensor as that is in an expensive iPhone. And that's the thing. People might think like, oh, I buy a more expensive iPhone, it's gonna measure more accurately. No, like Motorola, for the cheapest phones that we have always been using Motorola's in all of the competitions, you know, because they were the cheapest phones that we could find. Like 100 euro, 80 euro per phone.
Yeah,
it's gonna give you the same result.
Yeah, I've been stoked with using those Motorola phones. Also, I mean, I also want to point out, you know, there are some guys who will message me, especially because I'm publicly represent the Surfr App. Guys will message me saying like, hey, my jumps are measuring incorrectly. They're over measuring, under measuring, whatever they might be saying. I don't think anyone's ever actually said they're over measuring. No, that has happened a little bit actually.
Okay.
But I'm often quite surprised because I'm genuinely not experiencing any of those issues myself. Yeah. I mean, as somebody who runs beta, I've run a couple of your betas, or like especially when the first Apple Watch Surfr App algorithm was out, before anybody had it, I was encountering some of these issues with like heli loops aborting early. Which on one hand pisses me off, but on the other hand, I know that there's like a plan of action to address those issues, which frankly just wasn't an option back in the day with Woo. There wasn't actually any way to retrieve the raw data and any process for feedback to say, hey, something went wrong, let's get the raw data, let's investigate, see what was wrong, and train the algorithm better, somehow improve the algorithm or train it as with AI, which is the thing you've done. So when I came from a computer science background to just being like, there's like no iterative process here to improve the algorithm, I was like, this is kind of shitty. So that's also what made me very excited about
I mean, like from all of my time, which is now like, let's say 4 or 5 years in the Surfr App, 80% of my time, now not 80%, like the first 3 years, yes, but now lately maybe a little bit less, but still on average, maybe 60% of my time I'm working on this algorithm.
The core on the algorithm.
It's like years of time that has gone into it. Just to discourage anybody to try to do it.
He's talking shit. He hasn't done it in months.
or maybe I'm just like a really bad programmer and anybody can do it faster, you know. But no, I think
difficult problems to
for
solve.
sure there might be sometimes I never personally had a device like that, and I've been going with tens of devices that is actually glitched or something like that.
Yeah.
It might be there. I think it's more important that we are able to detect it. And I remember one guy 2 years ago, kept going out with his strange phone that was giving like a really bogus measurements, like 120 meters or so. So not like obviously completely wrong. Thought it was, you know, fun. And then but that's maybe like 1 or 2 times on like 200,000 devices.
Dude, I saw once in France, there was a kid who was using a Woo, and his Woo just was spitting out like 30-something meter jumps for every one of his jumps. And allegedly he jumped like 32 meters, like 10 times in the session. Okay. And if you looked at it, it would be like, fuck, that must have been the whole session. He must have just been up in the air. And shame the kid uploaded it and was all stoked. And for everybody else there, it was just like obvious that
it was an error,
that it was all bogus. And I think in that case, I think his Woo was a bit bugged. And I'm not saying it's to shit talk Woo, because to me it's an acceptable issue. Like knowing that fundamentally there's room for error. Yeah, it's just about how do you deal with the error.
Exactly, you know.
And then also not having the community being so desperate to believe that
is true. And also, you know, there is like data around the session, you know, and that is when we verify a jump, it's not just it's a bunch of things. We talk to the person most often. We look at how strong was the wind over there. We look at the data. We look at the person's profile. We look at the rest of his session. With a very high degree of certainty, you can see if it was bogus or not.
Bit of a sniff test, yeah. No, I'm with you. But nonetheless, I think it's like, I would love to know that less of those things come into the decision. And I think all of us as users would like to know that more objective empirical data, like the raw sensor data, is going to come into the decision more and more going forward, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so that's cool. I think we pretty much tackled all the how it works ideas.
Sure.
By the way, what's guiding this whole talk is a bunch of questions submitted by you guys.
Exactly. We are not explicitly, but I see them right on your screen.
This is not scripted.
But we do have the questions right here. But yeah, I think we are covering them. But yeah, thanks a lot for all the questions. That's really nice.
So AI, artificial intelligence. I think you spoke a bit about how it's used. Again, explain to me like I'm in 9th grade.
Yeah. So. The good news is everybody kind of starts having an understanding of what AI is, thanks to ChatGPT, for example. People understand like, okay, this is almost some magic, you know, a computer that can think, seems like it can think, and one of the things that AI is super good in is in pattern recognition, or just in any recognition. Like, you know, I have here security cameras at our posada. And if anybody walks around, it is able to detect if that's a person, if that's a cat. And how does it know if it's a person or a cat? It was trained. It was shown like many examples of what is a person and what is a cat. And that is then what you call like a neural network. A neural network is kind of like a digital representation of how our brains work. We also learn by training, and by doing something over and over, we make like neural paths in our brain, and they become stronger. One thing, like for example, a dog is, you can really see it really clearly. If you reinforce a bad behavior in a dog, it will become stronger and stronger. You know, like I played a game with our dog, with Gao. See if he's around. You know, throwing a stick. And then and he's not giving it back. And in the beginning, I was like trying to program him to giving it back. At some point, I started giving up, and I started going in his game, which is, you know, I'm not giving back the stick. I'm gonna run off with the stick. And I started reinforcing his neural network, and I kept doing that over and over again. And now there is no way in the world he will ever bring the stick back anymore. I just programmed him into the completely wrong direction.
Such an interesting way to look at your dog's behavior.
Yeah, exactly. But with neural networks, and then related to the Surfr App, it's the same thing. We show the Surfr App a bunch of examples we show the neural network a bunch of examples of jumps. Like, this is a landing, this is a heli loop, this
raw
is
sensor data.
Raw sensor data. Like, this is not.
This is the data.
Yeah, exactly. And but in the beginning we have to say.
And you tell it at this point.
This is the landing. This is the start, and then it starts recognizing this stuff. And obviously, the same thing as with the doc applies also. If I would give it wrong examples, it would start recognizing stuff wrong. And the cool thing of AI is that it at some point is trained enough to say like, oh, I'm 90% sure that this is a heli loop. I'm 90% sure that this is a landing. And then from that information, we derive our conclusions. And obviously, the more data we have, the better it will become. And that is the challenge. So sometimes some people come into our support that are consistently kiting at some crazy gusty spots, consistently getting strange jump with big updrafts, with big heli loops, and then I'm super happy to onboard them in our team of people providing data for Surfr AI. But the cool thing about Surfr AI is, and how we use it is, it can recognize better and better this type of things, because it is complicated, and it's more complicated than on a board. Because on a board you land on the water, you see where you landed it. On a watch it's different, you know. Like if you land really softly, or you do something strange with your watch in the air, it's more difficult to understand where the landing is.
So what you just said to me comes off as like an advantage of a board sensor, that you can more clearly see the landing.
Yeah, and that's true. So on the board sensor, you can definitely clearer see the landing, and so airtime precision on the board sensors is higher. If you want to know second precision, how much airtime your jump was, take a board sensor for sure. But on the flip side, and we talk about it in the next topic as well, board sensors have this flip side problem, which is they are exposed to all this noise, which is affecting the accuracy. So most accurate airtime, board sensor the way to go. Most accurate height, don't put it on your board.
So even though you can accurately, am I understanding this correctly, with the board sensor, you could more accurately determine where takeoff and landing is. Is that correct?
Yeah.
But you cannot rely on the raw data that you're getting from the accelerometer and gyroscope because of the noise.
Because of the noise, like on your approach of your jump, you know, like your board was bouncing on the water. And I mean, you can try to compensate that by creating better hardware for sure. And I think that is what companies are trying to do. But since Surfr doesn't make their own hardware, we are not going to introduce like a better phone for putting it on your board. So in our case, we actually strategically are kind of moving away from the board for that very reason. But yeah, airtime is you can measure more accurately on the board, and in Surfr it can be, it says 6.8, maybe it was 7.2. That can be the case. Luckily, airtime is not like the most important battle. Otherwise, we would maybe try to improve that better. But it's all about the height.
With you. That reminds me, when you start talking about another metric, I had a question in the accuracy section, which I'd like to come back to. How accurate are the other metrics? And second to that, let's look at each of them individually, and how accurate do you feel they need to be? What are the other metrics? Let's go through them one by one.
So height needs to be as super accurate as possible. That is like the number one importance. Airtime, I mean, you want it to be as accurate as possible as well, but half a second off we don't consider to be like really a problem. If I jump 10 seconds or 10.5, I and most of our users don't personally care so much. But if you jump like this 20 seconds hang time jump, you want to talk about, right? But if it's then showing as 19 or 21, for us at the moment that is like acceptable. Then distance. Distance is the only metric that is based on GPS. So we take a GPS fix on the moment that you take off and when you land. And the problem with GPS is it's just not so super accurate. Like newer devices like the Apple Watch, this one, and also Samsung came with recently with a new watch, Samsung Ultra Watch. They have dual GPS, which already improves the accuracy of GPS a lot. But yeah, you have to be careful with this distance calculation. So we are not only using GPS, we're using some other factors as well to make sure that we get as accurate as possible. But that would be the most unreliable metric, the distance.
Distance, gotcha.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, they get upset about the distance metric and some of the related ones, such as like speed. Speed is also just a question of distance per time, right?
Yeah, exactly. So everything that is derived from GPS, speed indeed as well. Yeah. Like if you really quickly accelerate, your GPS sensor is not going to know.
It's not going to notice it, right? Yeah. So I think a lot of people get upset when they see inaccuracy in those metrics and not understanding the more complicated underlyings, lose faith in the height.
Okay.
I've seen that in conversation, and I just want to encourage people out there to know that these are
different things. Yeah, completely different, Yeah. And I mean, I think we even got bashed recently for our distance metrics not being accurate by a solution that doesn't measure the distance. So that was funny. But I mean, like, we know that it's not super accurate, and
except for my jump, which is at the top of the leaderboard.
But
I don't know if I'm still there. Actually, I might not be.
No, I don't think so, because and that's the cool thing. It's not that it's totally bogus, because otherwise we would not use it in the Surfr App, right? I would not want that. But so for sure, yesterday my one nice jump was 100 meters. Yeah, it felt like it was far. And the current world record, I think it might be Andrea that did it in the competition, like 270 meters or so.
Mine was further.
You were further?
Mine was, I think it was further. I thought mine was like 300.
Really?
Maybe I'm tripping.
Let's see.
Maybe mine was 276.
Let's
I
see.
don't know. I figured- Anyway, but yeah, so
But
recently,
it's not the most accurate metric. But let's say Surfr App sets you jump 100 meters far. It will be around that mark, but might be 90, it might be 110. You know.
yeah, I looked at also my my chart, and I'm like where it says I landed versus where I actually landed. Like you can see there's a discrepancy in that data.
Exactly. Yeah.
So okay, so it's accuracy, that's not so accurate, right? Cool, gotcha, man. Well, we spoke quite a bit about artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
How do you continue to train the algorithm?
Yeah, by just collecting more data, right? So more data from other competitions, but also from average riders for sure. I have reached out to a bunch of individual Surfr users that have something interesting going on, and I asked them to contribute to the program. So like that, collect the data, feed it into the algorithm, and make a next version that is better.
And how frequently do you do this process?
I mean, it needs some time because you need to collect the data. You want to have these exceptional cases. They don't happen a lot. Like a very good example is within some of the Surfr users, some of the Surfr Pro users, like Hugh, like Lorenzo and Leonardo. It's not that they do it on a daily basis, like this crazy jumps with 5 heli loops or something. So I have to wait for the situation to happen. So it takes some time. But I would say algorithm update maybe once in a few months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Also, it would suck if you were doing it, updating it like every week or something, because it's nice to do it in bulk, right? When you have a large pool of data collected.
And currently our focus is not so much anymore about the main focus is to be able to better detect heli loops and stuff. That is the current version that I'm working on. It's not doing a bad job. Yes, once again, my example of yesterday, I did have a massive heli loop. I did go up. It did take it perfectly fine. So on most of the cases, it will be not an issue if you pull a heli loop, but there are cases that it is an issue, and so that is what I'm currently working on. Collecting strange jumps, gusty jumps. You go down, you go up again, and I'm using that for the next version to improve.
Cool, man. Cool. All right. Well, I don't know about you, but I think we can move on to the sensors section.
Sure.
Cool.
Sounds good.
Sensors. All right. So what are all the different options, and what are the pros and cons of each?
Yeah, so you're talking about where to put your sensor, or?
Yeah, let's talk about, what are the different sensor locations?
Yeah, exactly.
And what are the pros and cons of each?
Yeah, exactly. So now you can put your sensor, if I just look at the Surfr App, you can have it on your board, on your chest, or on your wrist. And the pros and the cons, I mean, I already said a little bit about the board mount. I think an important thing to consider is you're trying to measure the height of the jump, right? But the height of what you're actually measuring is the height of the sensor from the beginning till the maximum height that it reached. So somebody that kicks the board above the head will gain a couple of meters extra. Did that person jump higher or not? Now, in our opinion, no. Kicking your board up doesn't mean you jumped higher. So then you start thinking, like, what is a place to put a sensor where doing crazy things just have less influence on your actual height, right? On your arm, you can also still influence your height, not as much as your board, but you can still like gain maybe 70 centimeters or so by going from your bar till stretching your arm. And I recently wrote something on this. Maybe this is a nice moment for the people that don't know it. I wrote the Surfr Standard, which explains this a little bit more. But the best place to place a sensor would be a place where whatever you do with your body doesn't influence the altitude of the sensor. So and that must be the harness hook, because the harness hook is where the kite is pulling you. It's your point of rotation. It's not necessarily your point of gravity. What some people say. It depends, I guess, where you put it. But it's at least your point of rotation. So you do an inverted front roll, you do some back rolls, you do crazy things. your harness hook, your kite is pulling it, and that's why we say like the harness hook would, in theory, probably be the best place to place a sensor. Kick your board up, it will not have an effect. Raise your arm, it will not have an effect. So it's really funny that I have seen claims about that board is the best location to place a sensor. Well, it just doesn't make sense, because obviously it's not the best place, because it can be influenced by many meters. So, and then looking at the Surfr App, I would say the one thing that comes closest to the harness hook is your chest. Is also the least influenceable. So I would think within the Surfr App, that
unless you're like really good at the titty dance, and then you're like,
or you have to do really crazy things, so taking your phone out mid-air maybe. But no, that would be within the Surfr App, in theory, the most accurate position.
Gotcha.
And then after that, I would say the watch, and then third to that, the board, and that would be because it's like influenceable location, but also because the noise coming from the water.
Sorry guys, just had to increase the brightness over there on the camera. So okay.
Go.
So we were talking about the different. Oh, this dog is so cute.
Hello.
So let's get back to it for the audience.
Go.
So, sorry, where were we?
We were at what is the best and the worst places for placing a sensor, right? And
some people have made claims.
I mean, obviously, but I mean, I also admit that the watch is not, and I just think this whole debate and this whole discussion needs a bit more
science and objectivity.
Yes, and a bit more honesty. Bias. Like, why do we want to make these claims when it's obviously not the case, you know? And yes, the watch, you can gain some extra height by raising your wrist, and maybe we are going to be smart enough in the future to detect that and to compensate for that. But it's
or flag it or something.
Yeah, exactly. You know, but it doesn't make sense to make these bold claims. Like,
yeah, so, I still haven't yet once put my hand up and cloud fisted yet, and it's. I just think everybody should stop doing it because, like you say, it just kind of takes the fun out of it. Because then, in order to compete, everybody has to do it.
Yeah,
and that's fucking lame.
That's lame,
and
it's
so
like
lame.
And that's. Yeah, I think we have another topic about that, but that is, you know, about how to keep it as fair as possible, and yeah, I mean, I would also vote for not doing it, but maybe otherwise in the future we can hopefully make it so smart that it will detect it, you know.
Nah, it's disgusting.
Yeah,
it's just like
yeah, I know.
Like what is the equivalent? It's almost the equivalent of like invisible lat syndrome. Like, you know, when someone walks and they like keep their arms a little bit wide. I sometimes do it. I don't know why. It's a little bit weird. And they have huge lats. Like they're so massive that they have to swing the arms around.
Oh, that's why you do it.
I almost do I do that?
Yes, man.
Oh,
But
I think it's just my posture. In fairness.
Yeah. But I mean, the sensor location, one thing more to say about that is like people have said about Surfr, like, yes, but you know, with the Surfr app, everybody can place a sensor in a different location, you know, so it's not fair. Like somebody has it on the board. How come that is on the same leaderboard? Like the board sensor, the watch, and the chest sensor, they're all on the same leaderboard, but they're measuring different things on different locations of the body. And one thing that I want to say about that is that even if we would choose, let's imagine the Surfr app would only be the app only doing watches, we would still have the same problem that the sensor is all over the place, because some people raise their hand, some people don't, you know? Or if you would say, I'm only doing the board sensor, you cannot say the sensor is in the same location, because it's like in a different location all the time. And then I also hear the argument, yes, but you know, kicking your board up, it's true, it gives you extra meters, but everybody can do it, so what is the problem? And I don't agree with that argument once again, because it's like, to me, that's like saying like, I'm not necessarily saying that kicking your board up is cheating, by the way, but let's call it cheating for now, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's like saying,
it's giving the impression that you went higher than you did, when I guess what you're saying is, it would be, in the ideal world, we would measure everybody's height gained,
exactly,
from altitude gained from the hook.
Yeah, exactly.
So in the sense that you are in the sense that you are tricking the situation and getting a measurement that's further from the truth of that like actual height.
Yeah, you could.
You are kind of cheating.
You're kind of cheating, indeed. And yeah, this is a good one, by the way, to say it like that, because this is exactly how we define the height. We define the height as like the meters gained by the pull of the kite, you know, at your harness hook. So obviously to measure that would be the best to do that at the harness hook.
So why don't you do that? I've been wondering, like, why didn't you find a way to attach a watch to it? Or
I mean, never say never, but at the moment it just made sense to stick with what the devices that are already
less friction
there.
for everyone, right?
Yes, exactly. And of course it has like this small limitations to it. But yeah, I would say that's kind of it about what we measure and where we measure it indeed.
Gotcha. Okay, so if somebody wanted to, do any devices have an advantage or disadvantage in the whole Surfr ecosystem?
I would say board mounts would give an advantage, because you can actually kick it up by with such aggression and such big distance. So yeah, I would think that is like the most advantageous device.
And that aggression, do you believe that can result in additional meters?
I don't know. I don't have proof of that. It's also super hard to test, obviously. I have heard people, not necessarily about Surfr App, but I have heard people saying about, you know, if I kick my board up really hard, really fast, it's not just 2 meters that I gain. It's like 4 or 5 meters that I gain. So that is a tricky thing. I have no test data for that. So I don't know. But yeah, it's for sure it's like the most cheatable place to put a sensor. And one final thing that I want to say about that is the argument I've been hearing a lot is, yes, but everybody can kick the board up, so what is the problem? And that, I think, is just a little bit lame, like saying, okay, for any game, let's say Monopoly or something like that, everybody can steal from the bank money and win the game, right? But that doesn't mean that the game is fair, because we can all steal, so now the game is fair. We can all kick our board up, so now the game is fair. No, it's a problem for the game that we can do that in the first place. So I think the strategy for Surfr is we want to avoid that you can do it altogether. So this means for all the board mount users, although, and actually we're going to talk a little bit about the board mount later. Yeah, unfortunately, it's not the device that we will put most of our focus on in the future.
Gotcha. Okay. Tell me about Garmin. I believe it's in beta right now.
Yes.
Why is it in beta?
I mean, in beta, we kind of like hope for a bit more understanding from users that we will remove some data sometimes. So because Garmin there is a lot to say about it. I think we don't necessarily want to do that in this podcast and spend so much time on it, but Garmin is a challenge, because Garmin watches are designed for different purposes as an Apple Watch. You know, an Apple Watch is basically an extension of your phone. It's almost a computer by itself. It has massive hardware on board. It has a processor. It has like a few gigabytes of memory to work with. A Garmin watch is like your MP3 player from or your Nokia 3310. You know, like it goes.
Are they kind of shitty?
It's by design, I would say. Shitty by design.
So it's better battery life because
yes, exactly. You know, the more resources you put in a device, and it's also because they never had. It was never the purpose for the people that brought the Garmin to market. It was never their purpose to do such complicated things as that Surfr is doing, like games, graphical things, calculations. That wasn't their purpose. Their purpose was basic tracking stuff, GPS related stuff, and then uploading that to a portal and then deriving all kind of insights from that, from your heart rate. But the thing that the watch needed to do was track your GPS, track your heart rate, and the rest is post-processing. So these watches are by design. It's not like a mistake that they made or that they are stupid over there. No, by design, they are made with very, very little hardware on board. Like an average Garmin watch has like, you know, a few megabytes of memory compared to gigabytes on an Apple Watch. So then to try to program Surfr in for these watches, because there was a lot of demand for it. That was obviously why we did it. It's still like it's a super popular watch. It's maybe as popular as the. I think the Apple Watch is like is gaining the upper hand, especially amongst our users. But yeah, we really wanted to do something for the Garmin users, but it turned out we couldn't actually accurately calculate heights right on the water, right on your wrist. So we're not doing that at the moment, and most likely we'll never do it because those watches, they don't have the equipment on board.
Gotcha. So you guys right now show indicative height. And
Yeah.
I haven't used the Garmin watch, but you show indicative height. But I mean, doesn't that just create a bit of upset? Like,
Yes.
have you thought about just removing it?
Yes, exactly. And we're still thinking about removing it, like the indicative height. Thanks for learning me how to pronounce that word, because I was always saying indicative.
I suppose some people could pronounce it that way.
Okay, indicative height. Okay, cool. But yeah, that height, it's an indication, but unfortunately not everybody understands that it's an indication. So it creates a perception. I've seen videos of people going on, right, hey, look, the Surfr shows 50 meters, was obviously not 50 meters. No, and we never claimed that it was 50 meters.
Yeah.
You won't see this height in the Surfr app. It's just an indication.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe we want to remove it, but
Yeah.
from a survey that we did recently, 80% of the people said it's fairly good, and I know it's not perfect, but I rather keep it, So don't
But
remove
it just,
it.
I think it's just got to be communicated so clearly.
Yeah,
Because like you see, once people see that number, they get excited about it.
yeah.
Get attached to it.
But then the heights that you see after your session in the Surfr app, they are accurate. They are like calculated with Surfr AI. They have similar accuracy as Apple Watch, Galaxy Watch. There were some challenges in the beginning, creating some problems, some glitches, some outliers. That's why we say it's in beta. That's why we have been removing some jumps from some sessions. But overall, in general, if you are deciding for buying a watch because of the Surfr app, don't buy a Garmin watch. Buy an Apple Watch if you're an Apple user. Buy preferably the Galaxy Watch Ultra if you are an Android user. It's an expensive watch though, and otherwise you can buy like the Galaxy watches. But
Can I just say on the topic of watches, I mean, I've got this Apple Watch Ultra 2, I think it's Ultra 2, and initially I was like, man, 900 euros for a watch, it's a lot of money. But now that it's part of my everyday life, some of the small things I do on it are really freaking awesome. I mean, for one, like whenever I do yoga, I've got my timers going so I can time my stretches. I can set an alarm that wakes me up in the morning just with vibration, so it doesn't wake me up with sounds and wake up my wife, who's a light sleeper. I mean, I have sunrise and sunset there. That comes in handy. I have Siri on my wrist if I want to add a reminder, ask a question. Although Siri's kind of shitty, to be honest with you. I think Siri's it's shockingly bad. But, it's small things, controlling Spotify. These little things add up. And at the end of it, I'm like, damn, if I lost it today, I would buy a new one tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's how good it is. And yeah, if I want to find my phone, boom, I press the little button and bing, 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 my phone beeps off out there. So, and I'm sure there are other things that I use it for that I didn't really think I would. So yeah, anybody who's like, I don't know if I want to get a watch, I would say if you can afford it, get it. It's sick. Obviously, Surfr App as well is really cool to use on it.
And or buy this 250 euros Apple Watch SE, It works fine.
It works fine. And
maybe the battery
life was a bit of a bummer.
But the newer ones, I mean, battery was a thing for the Surfr app as well for a while to save more battery. So I think it's significantly better than maybe at the time that you were on.
Gotcha.
But yeah, the watch is definitely a really nice device, and we'll talk about a little bit later about when we talk about how we see the future. But for sure, it's super important for guiding.
So we got some questions.
Yeah.
Let's get into one from Mr. Joe Spano. Are the Garmin watch and the Apple iPhone in a pouch less accurate? I've seen friends not jump high at all and come in with really big jumps that don't make sense recently this year, 2024, using those methods.
I don't know if he means like putting a Garmin watch in your pouch.
No, I think he means like independent.
Okay. No, like Garmin, assuming that he's talking about the heights that we see in the Surfr app, yeah, that shouldn't be the case. So I would be interested to investigate it a bit. Maybe if it was in the early stages, we did have some outlier problems with the Garmin. At one point, I removed like 200 of those type of jumps from the Surfr App. So I would be curious to hear from Joe if this particular situation has been resolved as well. But no, it shouldn't really make a difference, except the natural difference. Like you take your phone in your watch, in your pouch, and then with your wrist you do this. Your wrist is probably gonna measure a little bit higher, you know. So those natural differences, yes. But like crazy anomalies, by now we should have passed that time.
Gotcha. Back to sensors.
Back to sensors. Yeah, I don't even know where we left off. I think we talked about sensor locations. We talked about Garmin. I mean, just for concluding on the Garmin subject, I think yeah, we do support it. We will keep supporting it. We might remove the indicative height because it's too confusing to people. And yes, it's not the best watch for the Surfr App for sure. So not in terms of it's less accurate, but in terms of the user experience. It takes time to synchronize to the Surfr App, a long time sometimes. This is like the #1 complaint we get from our users. We are talking with the Garmin team. Like that's the beauty of Garmin. It's like a company of a few thousand people compared to, I don't know, hundreds of thousands at Apple and Google. So you can actually reach people. You can actually talk to people. But to change, in order to make a change, yeah, I think it will take a very long time, and it will require maybe another type of Garmin watch in the future that does have more calculation power, that does have more capacity, and that does have, like, for example, there is not a single, there's actually one Garmin watch that has eSIM capabilities, but all the rest, like 90 plus watches, don't have it, you know. So they're really on a different path, and it's not a path that is super great for Surfer, but I would almost say it's not a path that's super great for them in general, because I really feel like the better way to go these days is an Apple Watch or even a Wear OS watch.
Yeah, I mean, my dad was doing triathlons until recently. He had he had a knee surgery, which is a bummer. And yeah, he says everybody's been moving on to Apple Watches.
Yes, it's such an amazing
epic battery life, so many other benefits. Yeah. Oh, so sick.
Cool.
So, yeah, we got some other questions over here. Is there a feature where you'll be able to merge data from multiple sensors in one session, e.g. watch plus board?
I mean, what would be the goal of that? Like, that I don't understand, you know?
Bit a weird one, eh?
Yeah.
It's like a... like who'd want to do that?
Yeah, like you would maybe. I mean, because it would ruin your session statistics, right? It would say, oh, you jumped a total height of 2 kilometers. Well, in reality, you only jumped a total height of 1 kilometer because now it got doubled off. So
I think the assumption would be that there's some way that there's some benefit from having more data.
Yeah.
Like maybe that you could average.
Yeah, maybe you could do something in terms of to improve the estimation of how high the jump is. Maybe you could use multiple sensor inputs. But considering that barely anybody goes out with more than one sensor, I don't think this will happen anytime soon.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Moving on to fairness and cheating. So can we define fair and define cheating?
I mean, like, that's the thing, right? Is kicking your board up cheating? Is raising your watch hand cheating? It's hard to say. I mean, it's really a matter of definition. I think cheating in general is not so much of a problem. I don't really think, and I haven't seen too much proof of it. Like maybe 1 or 2 times, somebody puts a device on the drone and accelerates from the floor up and down and registers like 30 meters. Obviously, you can completely see that it's a bogus jump. People have been taking it in roller coasters, but it's all not even really on purpose, you know. So I have to say I'm really impressed with the kite community in that way, that nobody really seems to, or just a very few people seems to really try to cheat the game. I think it has to do with, even if you cheat it, what is it going to bring you, you know? Because your friends are not going to believe it anyway, because they know how you're kite. So you managed to cheat the sensor. Congratulations! Now you have 30 meters, but everybody knows it's not true. You will be reported. You will be flagged, This is different from like chess, for example, playing online chess. Nobody knows how good you are, so you can cheat. But with kiteboarding, people know how you jump, so cheating makes like absolutely no sense. So I don't think cheating is really a problem, as in people really trying to cheat the game. But obviously we do want to keep it as fair as possible. So you do have to think about questions like, okay, how are we dealing with people kicking their board up? And but I would say that's almost the most important one. Beside that, I don't see so much rigging going on, honestly.
Sure. Well, we spoke about cloud fisting, board kicks, sensor placement to cheat. What about calibration? Can people cheat by incorrectly calibrating their device?
Not that it will have a lot of effect, you know. Like our calibration, the way that we do is just a really basic one, and obviously you cannot actually calibrate your device completely wrong. Yet you can try. Everybody can try that for themselves, and you will see the Surfr App will say like, "Hey, this device, this is not how you can calibrate it." So no, that doesn't have a lot of effect. I think the biggest ways of, if you really want to cheat, is like, you know, just starting to mess around with the sensor, do a bunch of board flips, let your board fall from the sky, like this kind of things. But yeah, honestly, where is the fun in that? I do really believe that it doesn't happen. And that one few times that we do see something really strange on the Surfr App, we delete it, and that's it.
What about, I mean, you spoke about the goal is to figure out how much of the distance is covered on the Z axis, right?
Yeah, like yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, would you not be able to calibrate the device such that you're able to trick it into thinking that distance is Z? Or like,
No.
sorry, that...
No, you
like,
cannot, because...
not even if it's off by like a couple degrees?
No, that won't... I mean...
How do you counter that?
Yeah, so there is just to remember, there's like the accelerometer in your phone, which will always measure gravity. So somebody that, when the Surfr App put your phone flat on a flat surface and you place it like this, the Surfr App will say it's not flat enough, because it can measure that already. Even with an uncalibrated sensor, you will get a fairly good indication. And then if you have it slightly off, no, it's not going to affect. The proof that I have for that is the fact that in Cape Town, we did multiple tests with a bunch of randomly different devices that were calibrated by different persons on different locations. It was just, okay, take your phone, my phone, take a bunch of different devices, take them out together at the same time. We know that none of them were perfectly calibrated, and still they were consistent as what we expected, you know? So no, it doesn't affect it by a lot. So why do we do the calibration? It's more to find and flag out the phones that are really off. Because some phones sometimes come out of the factory with they measure, instead of measuring 1G, when you put them in rest, they measure 1.1 or 1.2G, and that's a problem.
Huge, yeah.
And then we compensate for that.
Gotcha.
But that is, I mean, it seems like a complicated process, because you have to put your phone sometimes in 9 positions, but it's basically just quite a basic test.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. So, question from Pete de Borzak. Is there a way to penalize or undo the effects of cloud fisting? I refuse to do it, but I can't stop my friends who are such douchebags.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. I threw in the douchebag spot.
Yeah.
Pete's friends, stop it.
That's a good question, though. I mean, maybe it's a really difficult movement. Obviously, it's probably easier to detect somebody kicking a board up, because that your sensor goes upside down. So we do actually have this detection in the Surfr App. So we do know when people kick the board up. We just don't do anything with it right now. But cloud fisting is going to be a bit harder to detect, you know. You would probably see some form of acceleration, because people go gradually up and then they do this. But I think if you really want to do it and get that 70, 80 centimeters extra, I think at the moment, yeah, that's what Peter just have to outjumps his friends by a bit wider margin for now.
So Giuseppe asked, he said it's possible a central leaderboard would benefit both Woo and Surfer curious if it has ever been explored.
Like centralized leaderboards I think by now, considering everything that we have talked, it should be quite clear that accuracy is really related to software, and that is our proprietary software, and it has taken years of development to accomplish where we are right now. So you cannot compare that with another solution that has come independently to life and might have completely different algorithms, So we already know it's not comparable because we already know that the Surfr App measures lower than some other solutions out there. So we know that if we would put that together on the leaderboard, that wouldn't make sense. We know that there's some people that have scraped this data from the Surfr App and scraped from other providers and put it on the same leaderboard. You can do that. And there's nobody holding you back. But yeah, we at Surfr, we will not do that. Obviously, we also believe that our measurements, we believe in ourselves, we believe in our accuracy. There is no way I can vouch for another product. I can vouch for our own product, and that's the only thing I put up on the leaderboard.
Gotcha. Which an interesting one there. One that often gets brought up when I've said to friends, "Hey, look, like Woo tends to measure higher." They'll say, "Oh, but look at Jasmine's jump. She actually broke the Woo record for women. I don't know if she still has it. Maybe. I'm not sure. Probably. And she also jumped her. Sorry, did I say Woo record? She jumped her Surfr record, and she jumped her Woo record.
Okay.
And Surfr measured higher.
Yeah.
And that again was a circumstance where she actually crashed and she penetrated the water, which is why. And look, discrepancies can happen, but typically the discrepancy happens such that Woo over measures. Yeah. But yeah, again, penetrating the water for me is like one where I do see consistently.
That Surfr, okay, yeah, that would be.
So it's a similar one to tackle to your heli loops one,
Yeah. No, for sure. That's an interesting one, and I definitely want to put some more research in that.
The next 50 knot day in Cape Town, guys are just gonna be at the top of their jumps and going to eject and drop.
Yeah, try to see if you try to go 5 meters underwater and gain some extra height, swim around. But
I think you would, dude. Like, why wouldn't you? I mean, your algorithm right now is like.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's once again, it's the law of averages, right? So on average, apparently, Surfr measures lower, but I don't. I'm pretty sure we don't measure too low compared to actual height.
Nah, absolutely not. And that's why I also want to come in and vouch for it and say, it doesn't matter what the reading is relative to Woo. What matters is how is it compared to actual height. Like, drop your ego, forget about what other devices are saying, and just look at the video data as well. And, and just be like, well, how high is that actually? And also, if you look at street poles or things, just tall objects around you, and you figure out the height, and then try and benchmark your height relative to those things, I would say Surfr is
humbling,
Surfr is much closer to the truth. And I'm not saying that because I'm paid to say that. That's just my truth. Of course, you can say, oh, you wouldn't. You can be skeptical if you want. I'm just telling you my opinion. And
also one thing that I always encourage everybody that is, saying, you guys are biased. Of course, first of all, yes, we are biased. I mean, I am biased. I'm the founder of the Surfr App, so how can I ever be unbiased? But I do like to be biased with arguments, And then I would say just look up some of the recent videos, some of the recent world records that have been claimed. Look at the video. Like, find the moment in the video where the person is on the very highest. Try to find a reference point in the same video. Often it's possible. A line length reference, for example. If it's a good side angle, you can say, okay, he was on 21 meter lines, so this is 21 meters. Let's plot it on the highest person, and you will see that there is like in general a huge overestimation of jump heights. Yeah, completely. So and just look at the last five world records or so. And that is like that's the conclusion. So yeah, that's, I think, the situation. And of course it will hurt some people's feelings when Surfr is measuring lower, but luckily we're reaching a situation where people don't necessarily compare it too much. How high did you jump on Surfr, and it gets compared with other people on Surfr.
Yeah.
And of course, we will talk about it in the roadmap. We wanna make the community more alive, and we wanna do much more for the community. But luckily it's becoming less and less of an issue that we need to measure the same as other solutions out there.
So earlier on, you spoke about maybe not using your max height in a session as the metric that we should use to win by, and we should rather compete on another metric. Have you considered incorporating some of these games into the Surfr app?
Yes, I mean,
or even different leaderboards where it's like a leaderboard for top 3 jumps accumulated in your session, or something.
And we
like
do
that.
it in some competitions, like some competitions that have been organized. The organization wants to reward the average or the total height that you jump. There's many different things. And how big is a jump? You can argue that it's not just about the height. You can also argue it's a combination of airtime, height, and distance. Because I jumped 30 meters. I did it in 6-7 seconds of airtime. I would think it's almost impossible, but it's probably a smaller jump than when you jump 30 meters and you go 300 meters far and you take 5 heli loops, So those, you can even do like some calculation with those metrics as well. And yes, we have thought about that. We didn't change anything yet.
Okay, cool. Let's move on to the future.
Yes.
So what's your vision for the future?
Yes, I think it's something that has gradually developed, and I would say when I started Surfr, it was about the board mount and having your phone on your board, having the display on your board. Now the watch has taken over completely. Most of our users use a watch, and I also totally believe that is the future. I think in the future, a watch is probably as much as a part of your equipment as, at least that is the vision, as a kite is or as a bar is, You're going to start kiting, what do you need? You need a bar, you need a kite, you need a board, you need a watch. I think it will reach that point at one point. And why do you need a watch? Because it's not just for measuring height. If that would be the only use case, maybe it would not become part of the standard, but I think it will go much further than that. I think it will have to do with safety, with communication with people around you, With the Surfr app, you can already communicate with your friends. We want to do a lot when it comes to safety, working together with kite schools, rescue centers. Imagine you drift away from the beach in Tarifa with offshore wind. Imagine you can make an alarm on your watch. Imagine it rings it rings a bell on the desk of the rescue center that is there. They get like direct directions to the person where it is. They just have to follow the direction or the arrow or whatever to find the person there in the water. So I think the watch has a lot of use cases. Just being safe, being online. Obviously, many people that use a watch right now are not online yet, but I do believe in the long run people will. With the eSIMs, the eSIM adoption under watches. So I think that is when it comes to the device and the tracking. When I think about the Surfr app itself, we truly believe that we really want to move past the point of being a tracking app. We want to, now people use the Surfr app for what? You go to the water, you turn it on, you come home, you turn it off, and that is basically all of your use. And then you look at some friend sessions. But what we have said internally is like we want to give people a reason every day to use the Surfr app, and related to your passion, of course, relating to kiteboarding or other water sports, because that's also an opportunity. But you can learn something in the Surfr app, maybe on progression of your kiting. You can communicate with friends. You can integrate into new social settings. Maybe you're going alone on a kite trip somewhere, and you're alone, but you want to join some groups. Maybe there's groups in the Surfr app that you can join. Maybe you can talk with them. Maybe they can organize events in there and announce it in there. So I think it will be much more about social community and having people coming to the app every day, like almost like a social media, like how you use Instagram, how you use various other platforms, Facebook. So I would say that is kind of the vision, and we are actively doing some really big things at the moment. There will be a completely new Surfr user interface.
That's exciting.
Yeah. So everybody has got super used to the current UX. It will and the UI. It will go. It's gonna be completely different. We will focus much more on what is happening here around you. So I open the Surfr app, I can directly see where I am on the map. I can see who is around me, other surfer users, who is kiting right now on the water on a map, which size are they using, you know, something that comes more alive. So I would say that is like the main vision, and some spoilers for what will be coming up soon. On the short term, we're also doing some cool stuff. By the time this podcast is out, it might probably already have been released. We're gonna do leaderboard emails, so you can brag even easier when you jump in the top 20 or so, because you'll get an email and you can share it straight to your Instagram. We're doing a support for other languages. So like 4 or 5 languages that we add. So Surfr will be available in Spanish, in Portuguese. And yeah, so those kind of things that we're currently working on. But and who knows, maybe in the future other sports, you know. But I do believe it will always be related to water sports. I don't think Strava it makes any sense for Surfr to start to try tracking, you know, hikes or anything like that.
Sure, I'm with you. Now tell me, you mentioned some really cool features and teased at a couple things there. What is something in the Surfr app that you feel is just amazing that most people don't use or just don't know about? What hidden gold is there?
There is one thing, and I personally feel that we can do so much with it. It's just like a matter of prioritization and time on our side. But Surfr Discover, it's a small menu item on the bottom of the Surfr app, is of absolutely great value. Actually, one of your clinic guys said to me, it's the thing I use the most.
Oh wow!
He said, I love Surfr Discover.
Who said that? Was it Jakob, no?
Yeah, it was Jakob. He said, man, cool. I go to a new place.
He told me about it, yeah.
I go to a new place and I figure out where to kite. I read the reviews. Because we have like thousands and thousands of reviews. The Surfr app has like the single largest kite spot review database, written reviews of people. So, and there's wind statistics. You can navigate through the map.
See other sessions for the spot, to see if people have been jumping high. That's a good indication of wind speed or quality.
But for sure, I mean, I'm just thinking if I want to spoil this already, but we are working on some nice new ways of leveraging this data. And because, you know, if I look at Facebook, although it's not so active anymore, but if I just scroll through any Facebook kite group or any WhatsApp kite group, the questions are always like, what is a good place to go kiting in February that has a kite school? Or I'm looking for a place that has 4 out of 6 days strong wind, but it needs to have a good restaurant as well, or something like that, you know? You get this type of questions and then people start recommending. Surfr can answer like a lot of these questions already. And the only thing that I want to say right now is that we will bring something to the market that will help people answering these questions.
Super cool.
And that is really cool. And one thing more to say about it, because when you look at wind, what is good wind to me can be so much different from what is good wind to you, you know? Like here in Brazil, wind is blowing every single day, but some people are not looking for every single day wind. They're looking just for nuclear winds twice a week or so, right? So yeah, I think it would be really nice to have a solution that will help people find those places. So I would say Surfr Discover is the feature to check out if you didn't do it yet.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So a lot of you guys probably are followers of me since you're listening to this podcast. You know, I made a big air destination guide a while back, which crowdsourced a lot of data from you guys, which is super cool. But just knowing the quality of the data that Herbert's building, that Herbert's built this thing on, it's insane. And the fact that it can just be collecting data
automatically.
And it's not going to be biased data as well. It's so cool, man.
Yeah,
so exciting. And wind directions that you get for each spot. I mean,
exactly,
because you can tell
the prevailing wind directions from the GPS.
Phenomenal.
And that's the thing, as if you're not depending on moderators, that is really valuable.
Yes.
So we moderate nothing. We have people bringing in data and reviews, and that's it.
So cool, man. So cool. So, I mean, are you looking for investors at any point? Are you open to investment?
I mean, like it's going super well with Surfr, and we're doing a lot of a lot of people are taking the pro subscription for unlocking these extra features, and but for sure there are possibilities for us that we are considering for accelerating our growth. It feels like in some countries Surfr is still like pretty, maybe like a best kept secret or something like that, so there is ways of doing that faster if you would have more money available to doing more marketing campaigns. So yeah, to answer your question, we are open to investigating this type of routes as well, attracting some money, and we have done in the past, and to make sure that we can keep pushing.
Cool, man. Awesome stuff. So we got some questions over here, questions about the future. Do you plan on creating a Woo Worlds equivalent?
But we are going to do some serious community-wide competitions for sure. We're going to do that. Like, I would love that. There is like, I don't know, like 30, 40 competitions around the world that nobody's probably aware of except the local communities that are running with Surfr. From like snow kiting competition in Norway till little boost of competitions, sometimes even with a live stream. So that happens a lot. But we do want to create a worldwide big event. Also, I want to do a competition specifically for invited riders. So that would probably be
sick, dude. Like, that sounds like fun.
30, 40 people.
I want to
maybe.
compete.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So yes, no, it's gonna happen. I don't know when, but one point.
Sick. When you're too old to compete with the young battle shredders. Let's go. I'm ready. So what's your 6-month and 2-year product roadmap from Pete?
Yeah, I think we kind of answered that. Like on the short term, we're doing some really cool things, and then on the long run, we're basically looking at completely redoing the Surfr user interface on the front end. So I think we answered that one.
Someone asked me, what new features would you like to see integrated into Surfr?
Yeah.
I mean, the first thing that obviously comes to mind for me is multiplayer mode on the watch. I love playing games with mates. I used to be addicted to video games as a kid, and to just be able to play video games on the water, games, sick. I have to take the board mount now, and right now it relies on other people having the board mount to play. So, but I love that. I mean, that to me makes...
That is so fun, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we're just constrained by cellular connectivity. And once you can have a good cellular connection on your watch anywhere in the world, close to a city where there's cellular connectivity, then that'll be possible. I think there's a lot of obstacles in that front.
Yeah, it's a super cool feature. It's on our roadmap. We will do it. And
but it doesn't even help that much to it now. Well, it helps the Netherlands because I'm sure a lot of people can easily get cellular connectivity on
exactly there. People don't even realize this is, by the way, just a tip. Is it Tuesday today? No, it's not Tuesday, but just a tip. Like, it's pretty easy in many countries, especially in Europe, to get your watch connected, and just do it because it makes you possible to call alarm services. If you're in deep shit in open water, you can now just call like 911 or 112 when you're in Europe to get help. So for sure, connect this watch. For me, it was 5 minutes of work in the Netherlands, just following the steps in your watch app with Apple Watch. And it's connected. You pay like €5 per month, and all of a sudden you feel so much safer on the water. So
super cool. And what other features would I like to see? Look, I mean, I think the board mount's a big one for me for coaching, like seeing edge angles pretty rad.
Yeah.
And I think there are a couple other things to do there on the coaching front that are pretty rad. And there is a coaching mode. I don't know, is that publicly available?
It will be really soon.
Oh, so I've got a coaching, sorry, spoiler alert.
No, good.
On my watch, I have the coaching mode. I remember with Jakob, I was like, let's put on your coaching mode. And he was like, what? And we're on the water, and I wanted to coach him with the coaching mode. So anyway, you can see the speed that you were going in on approach of your last jump, your average speed and your max speed, I think it is there. And then your corresponding jump height to get the correlation between going faster and jumping higher, which, by the way, I still want to emphasize, speed's important, but it's way less important than timing.
Yeah.
You have to have good timing.
Yeah.
You're better off having excellent timing and no speed than all speed and shit timing.
Yeah, we are not going too deep there, but the cool thing about speed, although it's just one metric for sure, it kind of requires you to do a lot of things right, you know, because try to write, imagine you are terrible at etching, and then you are trying to write 40 kilometers per hour plus. You're not going to be able to do it. So you will indirectly kind of have to fix your etching to be able to write at that speed. Otherwise, you're just going to fly downwind, you know.
Yeah.
So it's a cool feature. I have my personal wishes as well, of course, and you would think I can always put that just on top of the roadmap. Sometimes I do that, but I also respect my colleagues' wishes and opinions. But one thing that I wanted to do, which is going to come soon, also, other spoiler alert, might already be there actually by this time this comes out, is the export your jump as a video. So everybody has seen these videos of pro kiters jumping around and then all these counters going up and down, and many times people have asked like, hey, how do you do that? I want to do that as well. Now you can. So just go in the Surfr App, go to your session, go to your jump, press export as a video, and there you go. You have the video, overlay it on your footage, and that's it.
Yeah, man. I'm gonna post some of those soon. Cool. So yeah, I think before we
That last part we don't do, right?
yeah, before we close it off, you got some stuff to do. This man's got to cook tonight. 'Cause
Yes.
he's cooking at the posada. Man of many skills. He does cook super well, honestly, guys. It's he's a proper
Basic
foodie.
stuff.
Yeah, dude, I enjoy your food.
But
It's
good.
rad.
Yeah.
So, what do you like about your role in the Surfr App, and what don't you like about it?
Really good question. Yeah, so
Sorry, so you were saying
stuff I like is programming, is company strategy, company vision. Stuff I don't like is is basically the rest, honestly.
just like the mundane, repetitive stuff. Or
Yes,
like
and
financial stuff.
and really, specific problems or specific customers. Of course, they need to be looked at, but I rather have other people doing that. So yeah, those are the things. And I think when you grow a company in the beginning, you started from scratch. It's all fun. Now there is 70,000 or more than that people on the app. People expect you to run a proper business. Some of them pay for it also. Luckily, I have to say, kite community is a really chill community. Like, people are so nice, so friendly, so understanding. They understand you do this for passion as well. So in general, I have nothing to complain. But I can work as many hours as I want on this. And I think that's my challenge, to contain myself a little bit. Because I could work day and night on this project, and that's it's not a smart thing to do for any job that you have. But that is the only thing that I need to be aware of. Find like a work-life balance. Luckily, I'm in Brazil, so I get my dog wants to go for a walk. There's everyday people kiting that try to pull you into a kite session as well. So trying to find the balance.
Cool, man. Cool. Well, I think that is all from me. What about you, Herbert?
That's all from me also. Yeah, it was a pretty long run, but I mean, I really liked sharing these things and giving people a little bit of an idea what's going on behind the scenes. And it's not as easy, or it is not, there's a lot going on behind the scenes. And I would say let's all focus on making, at least that's what we do, making a best possible product, and that would be nice to, if everybody that is participating in this market would, put the energy in that and move away from, complaining and all kind of arguments that have been going on lately. So yeah, I'm super excited about the future, what it will bring, and I'm really grateful for everybody that has trusted the Surfr App from the get-go, and everybody also that has joined recently for sure as well. So yeah, nice. But thanks so much for having me on the Leading Edge podcast.
What a pleasure. It's super cool to be able to have such a cool conversation with you. By the way, as a question, what is your rating on chess.com?
At the moment, it's not so good, so I don't like to share.
What was it at its peak?
Somewhere around 1900 something,
Sure. So for the chess nerds out there, when I say Herbert's a genius, he is legit a genius.
But by comparison, you know, it's like...
Well, not comparing you to like the big dogs.
Okay, but yeah.
Like,
I like playing chess.
I know some very smart guys who are a lot smarter than me, and they're like, Herbert's better at chess. So like, I'm like, dude, this guy's clever. Anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed the show. I would love to get your feedback. Let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like the show or rate it on whatever platform you're using. And if you want to give any feedback about the show, I've got some forms down below. You can recommend future guests, and you can also give some feedback, good or bad. I love to hear it. We can only get better if we know what we are doing well and what we're doing wrong, and then we can try and improve.
All right.
Muchos besos and adios.
Muchos besos. Ciao, ciao.